brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 6th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Do you live in Essex, Suffolk, Sussex, perhaps Norfolk? Well, you'll be one of millions without a vote or a voice this May. 9 councils representing 5 million Brits are delaying elections. Nigel Farage says it smacks of dictatorship.
And why is the government so desperate to give up these Chagos Islands and give away up to £18 billion of our money to Mauritius? Well, new reports suggest the bizarre decision could all come down to a satellite communications system. We'll reveal all.
And the Conservative Kemi Badenoch has vowed to ban migrants who claim benefits from becoming British citizens. But is it enough to win back votes from the Reform Party?
And the government has plans to make it easier than ever for new nuclear power plants to be built as they rush to avoid net zero blackouts. Previously, just 8 sites in the UK were allowed to host nuclear power stations. Now, could one be coming to your backyard?
And could Greggs become the new favourite not only for sausage rolls, but burgers too? We've sent our intrepid reporter out to try the new recipe. Some breaking news for you to start the show. The Bank of England has announced that interest rates have been cut. Yes, they're down from 4.75% to 4.5%.
Well, there you go. That's what the experts were saying would happen. I thought maybe they'd be a little more cautious. Let us know your thoughts, though. gbnews.com/your say. Will that impact you? Perhaps your mortgage, perhaps your savings? Let us know.
It is, of course, a sign that the UK economy is getting back to a level of health. Or Could it be that the bank is worried about the sclerotically low growth rates that we've had in the economy?
Tom. I think it might be that one. Trying to get things going desperately with the sad growth that we're having at the moment. But we'll be discussing this with John Redwood, actually, very soon. But let's get the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories, well, that breaking news that the Bank of England lowered interest rates by 1/4 of a percentage point. The benchmark rate has reduced from 4.75% to 4.5% as the bank had come under pressure to boost the UK economy, which had been showing slow growth. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the Bank of England would be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reduce rates further. More in the next half an hour. In other news, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says immigrants should have to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible for British citizenship. Making one of her first policy announcements since becoming leader, Badenoch also said indefinite leave to remain should not be granted to those who have criminal records or who'd claimed benefits of social housing. Ms Badenoch has also announced plans to kick out low-paid migrants and ban those who claim benefits from becoming citizens. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp told GB News there were mistakes made under the previous government, and that's why under a new leader, there's a new approach.
In fact, they will be asked to leave and required to leave at the end of their visa. And in fact, if they try and claim benefits before the end of their visa, then they will have the visa revoked and will be removed from the country. Because I think what the British public want to see is very small numbers of people coming in to do high-skilled jobs. What we don't want to see are people coming here who say they're going to work and then don't work, or end up in very low-paid jobs which actually don't make a contribution to the exchequer, to the taxpayer. Overall, this is quite a radical new policy.
The move comes just a day after Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner confirmed local elections in 9 council areas will be postponed until 2026 as part of its reforms of local government. Leader of Reform UK Nigel Farage had this to say.
There is no justification for cancelling these elections whatsoever, other than sheer cowardice of what reform might do to them in those campaigns.
In other news, the government has announced plans to make it easier to build mini nuclear power stations in England and Wales as part of its efforts to boost economic growth in the country. The Prime Minister announced that more nuclear power plants will be approved as red tape will be, he says, slashed. The reforms will clear a path for so-called small modular reactors to be built for the first time in the UK, which ministers say would help to deliver clean, secure and more affordable energy. The government announced that archaic rules will be ripped up. The Metropolitan Police has stepped up its efforts to clamp down on phone thieves, seizing 1,000 stolen mobiles and arresting 230 people in a single week. During a week of coordinated action across London, the force specifically targeted and clamped down on phone thieves. This included action in hotspot areas like West End and Westminster, where nearly 40% of thefts occur, it said. The Met Police described it as a £50 million a year trade that saw stolen phones resold abroad and in the UK. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is chairing a summit today with law enforcement bodies to focus on tackling the issue. Grenfell Tower is to be demolished 8 years after a fire claimed the lives of 72 people. Bereaved families of the fire were told of the government's decision last night at a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister. However, members of the Grenfell United group, who represent some of the survivors and bereaved families, says some of the bereaved and survivors are upset about not having their views heard or being considered in the decision. And finally, dog treats made from lab-grown chicken have gone on sale at a UK pet retailer in what's been claimed as a world first. The treat, called Chick Bites, is made from plant-based ingredients combined with cultivated meat, which is produced by growing cells and doesn't require the raising or slaughter of animals and is being sold at Pets at Home. Meatly said the chicken was produced from a single sample of cells taken from one chicken egg, from which enough cultivated meat could be produced to feed pets forever, it says. The retailer, which has invested in Meatly, said the snack was nutritious, healthy and sustainable alternative to traditional dog treats. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 7 minutes past midday, we're going to go straight back to that breaking news this hour. The Bank of England has indeed cut interest rates from 4.75 to 4.5%.
So the bank's governor, Andrew Bailey, said it will be welcome news that we've been able to cut interest rates again today. We'll be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reducing rates further.
Well, let's break it down now with the former Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood. John, thanks for joining us. I suppose the big question here is, does this mean that the Bank of England thinks inflation is going to stay low and is, frankly, have the rates done their job?
I think they're taking a risk with inflation. I think they're responding to an extremely damaging budget, which has knocked all the growth out of the economy completely. And they're very worried that there's more bad news to come when the national insurance rises really hit home, leading to fewer jobs and less output. So from that point of view, it's good news, and I hope it can be reflected in mortgage rates, but it doesn't necessarily follow. But I think it's a risk because actually the government is allowing or forcing quite a lot of inflationary rises through. So we're seeing 5% on council tax or more. We're going to see quite big fares increases on nationalised railways. We're seeing very big increases in water bills to come. We are seeing a general worry that there's going to be an increase in service sector prices because of those huge national insurance increases that are going to be forced through. And what I wanted the Bank of England to do was to stop selling all these bonds they paid too much for. But it's the only central bank in the world that has decided to sell a huge number of bonds at massive losses and send the bill to the Treasury. I think that is a disgrace.
OK, so you think this cut is probably an attempt to get the economy going, to try and get some of that growth back, because we've seen, obviously, the forecasts be downgraded. Interesting you say that you hope that this will be reflected in mortgage rates, because up till now, the mortgage rates have stayed pretty stubbornly high, haven't they, despite a couple of cuts?
Well, that's the danger, you see. Yes, I'm quite sure this is a response to the bad budget and the no growth, because it isn't a response to inflation. Inflation did get down to 2% last summer and has been on the rise again. And there are lots of people who think it's going to go to 3% or more later on this year. So they're not following the data on inflation. On mortgages, you see, mortgages are lent for a longer period. And so they look at how much the government has to pay to borrow money for several years at a time. And that doesn't necessarily go down when the overnight rate goes down.
This is, of course, in the context of we saw our first rate cut just shortly after the general election. We were expecting a number of cuts sort of in the pre-budget world. And to some extent, are we not just sort of back now on that path that the country was set on, that the expectations that the markets expected back in July?
But I don't think we can be back on that path. And this is debated in the city and amongst experts. Some people think there could be 3 or 4 rate cuts over this year, and others think that's a bit optimistic. I don't think we can be back on regular cuts on that magnitude until we're sure inflation is back in the bottle. And it isn't. It's very clear that there are a lot of inflationary pressures. I mentioned some of them earlier, a lot of them public sector led. But there could be another round when we see the impact of the very big increase in national insurance. Now, it may be the economy is so weak by April, May, because of the tax rises, that then those extra costs can't be passed on. But that's what the Bank of England is gambling over. Because if there's any strength in the economy, then obviously companies will say, well, look, we've got to pay an awful lot more money to employ people, so we're going to have to put your prices up.
OK, well, Sir John Redwood, thank you very much indeed, former Conservative MP. Thank you for reacting to that breaking news that the interest rate has been cut by a little bit, by 0.25%. It is now at 4.5%. Interesting, isn't it, how this may well not be reflected immediately in those mortgage rates, because I guess the government is borrowing so much money. and whether the trust is that we can pay it back in full. That's what matters, isn't it?
It certainly is, but it also all matters in terms of what the Bank of England expects inflation to do. I think Sir John was there saying that he was a bit more pessimistic about where inflation is going, but the bank seems to be a bit more optimistic. Ultimately, it's a guessing game. We're going to see how the...
They were so slow, though, to recognise, you know, during the COVID period that inflation would become an issue, weren't they? So how do we trust that they now know what's going to be happening with inflation?
There is a school of thought that say they've overcorrected. You know, they didn't raise rates fast enough, early enough, so then they had to go higher than they otherwise would have gone to then get inflation back down again. But we're going to dig into this a little bit later in the programme as well and see what these boffins at the bank are actually saying about their decision.
Absolutely. But how will this cut affect local businesses? Well, our reporter Sophie Reaper, she's live in Blackpool for us this afternoon. Sophie, so will the impact be... Well, will this be greeted with happiness, I suppose, Sophie?
Well, you're joining me from a very sunny Blackpool this afternoon, and perhaps that's going to be reflecting the mood, because I think you're absolutely right. The news that interest rates are down is going to come as very welcome news here in this seaside town. And that's because Blackpool is a town synonymous with the gig economy, with tourism, and sadly, in recent years, quite a bit of deprivation. And what all that means is that quite a few people here in this town find themselves in the rented sector. In fact, latest figures show that around 42% are either private or socially renting. And what that means is that for anyone in Blackpool who is looking to get onto the property ladder, looking to take out a mortgage perhaps, the news that interest rates are down is good news, because it means that ultimately they will pay back less on any home loans. And it's a similar story for businesses like the ones you see here behind me on Blackpool Promenade. When they take out loans to perhaps try and grow and develop their business, they'll ultimately pay back less on those loans. Now, it's not such great news for anyone who's got any savings, for example, because that means that they will make less money on the money that they put into any savings accounts. Now, if we take a look at the context, of course, in December of last year, inflation went down, which shocked quite a few economists. They were predicting that it would either stay the same at 2.6% or that perhaps it would even increase. But instead, it went down to 2.5%. Now, when inflation is high, the Bank of England tends to increase our interest rates. But when it is low, that's when interest rates tend to follow suit. And that is because the Bank of England is trying to stimulate spending, to try and bolster our economy. Now, for people here in Blackpool and for people around the rest of the UK who are either trying to develop a business or perhaps trying to get onto the property ladder, young people, for example, first-time buyers, this is going to come as some very welcome news here today.
Well, Sophie Reaper, thanks very much for being there live in Blackpool for us, where the sun is at last shining. Perhaps we're putting the worst of winter behind us. Although,
I do hope so.
Perhaps it's still a little chilly.
It's so chilly. It's so chilly. Always this cold in February, probably is. Probably is. Anyway, the Prime Minister is facing renewed pressure over plans to surrender sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. We found out that it could be costing Britain up to £18 billion.
Yes, this agreement would hand over sovereignty while keeping the UK-US base on Diego Garcia. Now, disputes over the financial terms of this agreement continue.
But why has the government... We want to know this. Why has the government been so desperate to send so much of our money to Mauritius for a base on islands we already own?
It sounds bonkers, doesn't it? But according to one scoop in Bloomberg over the last 24 hours, this comes down to a satellite communication system that the base relies on, and whether or not the legal uncertainty of the ICJ ruling might take that away.
Well, we're joined now by former NATO commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, this suggestion in Bloomberg that this all comes down to some kind of satellite communication system, could that be true?
Well, it's a reasonable excuse for really undertaking this betrayal of our interests in these island territories. The fact of life is we're a very powerful military country, so is the United States. If we want to do communications there, we're going to do it. The Americans will put up additional satellites if they have to. It is an outrageously facile excuse for actually having to give these islands away.
extraordinary. I mean, I know the cost of one SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch is $100 million. Yeah, I don't know why I know that, but I do know that. You could have. Would that be 180 rocket launches for the cost of these of this deal? It does seem extraordinary, but is there a fundamental philosophical disagreement here, sort of between the Foreign Office and perhaps what the Americans might think? This tension between soft power and hard power. Perhaps the Americans would think the UN's not going to take our base away or reduce our rights to any communications spectrum because we've got a big army, whereas the UK might say, oh, we have to follow these rules.
Well, no, I mean, what is quite ridiculous here is a situation where the ruling is advisory only, and they're saying, well, if it becomes mandatory through the United Nations in future, there's lots of ifs, and these things may never happen. We don't actually have to deal with this issue at all. We own the islands. As you say, we've got plenty of military power. Why upset the status quo unless it's for some ideological or sort of anti-colonial reason? The Chagos Islanders themselves actually want to remain British. And Mauritius has no legal or historic claim to islands that are 1,500 miles away. So the whole issue is absolutely ludicrous. And I'm afraid to say the government is trying to show its anti-colonial and international law credentials at the expense of our security.
I mean, so Chris, do you think this is all some kind of, I don't know, some kind of reparations? Like, is this part of that sort of anti-colonial, sort of post-colonial ideology?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. And I think if you look on social media at the moment, most people think these payments are reparations in inverted commas. When you consider that the annual GDP of Mauritius is about 12 billion a year, it puts 18 billion into perspective. It's absolutely ludicrous. We own the islands. Let's keep them. The want the base there, so do we. And frankly, if you want to come and take it off us, then do so. But, there are so many ifs in this, and I don't see any United Nations organisation being able to impose on the United States, the United Kingdom, any ruling whatsoever, even if it were, seen to be mandatory. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's a surrender. We need to be a strong nation here and say the interests of the free world are absolutely at stake here in keeping this island territory, which is right at the heart of the Indian Ocean and is vulnerable to Chinese imperialism and its Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, this is one of the concerns, isn't it? That we're reading in Bloomberg that the International Telecommunications Union, this agency of the UN, could, I don't know, strip the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum rights that the UK and the US enjoy that allow that satellite communication over the island. But interestingly, the Intelligence Committee in Parliament saw that the International Communications Union has been massively influenced by China. This was a report they published back in 2023, before this whole discussion, or even people started talking about this being a potential issue with Chagos. Could it be that actually there is a sophisticated Chinese influence operation here, trying to prize these islands away for more nefarious means?
Oh, it's absolutely the case. I mean, China is all over the United Nations. It fronts up most of the committees and is heavily represented. The United States, the United Kingdom has heavily underinvested in the United Nations in the past. And I'm afraid to say those countries that wish us harm and wish us ill are well represented on some of these committees. The United Nations is long past the point at which it looks after the interests of all its members. It's become an ideological cockpit for people to fight in, and China has realised that, and this is part of that. I mean, the government's being incredibly naive. And the status quo is entirely defensible. I was pointing out to somebody today, Lord North is probably the most reviled prime minister in history for giving up the American colonies. If Keir Starmer gives up the Chagos, he's going to actually be competing hard for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, from where I'm sitting, it seems like a totally humiliating deal on our part. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, thank you very much indeed for your time, former NATO commander.
Although at least Lord North kept Canada and kept the sort of Caribbean islands, which were the real jewel in the crown of the American empire at the time. Right, all the money was coming from the Caribbean islands. The deal after Yorktown to keep control of of the Caribbean was a pretty good deal at the time. This, I would gently suggest, would be an even worse deal than the deal that signed over the loss of the 13 colonies that became the United States.
Even worse than that deal. Yeah, what are we keeping, eh? What are we keeping? This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Up next, we're going to head to Westminster as Sir Keir Starmer continues to face questions over the government's decision to delay certain local elections.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
We've got the Daily Mail now with the latest in the court case over whether a man is a woman or a man. It's a tough question. And J.K. Rowling has given her opinion. I think I can guess what it is, Cressida.
Explosive twist in Australia's What is a Woman trans battle as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling gets involved. So this is the court case Giggle versus Tickle. Tickle was a...
He's Mr. Men.
That's right. It's a Mr. Men trans battle.
Kind of is a Mr. Man.
It was a women's group, wasn't it? Tickle, Giggles... Oh, I get it wrong. Giggles for girls. And Roxy Tickle, who is a trans woman, wanted to join this group and wasn't allowed, was banned for being a biological male, and then sued and amazingly got $10,000 for this, which is already extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
But it's now doubling down and is going to file a cross appeal seeking to upgrade the judgment.
Yeah.
So Roxy has come back for another bite of the cherry.
And I've had a look at this Roxanne Tickle, the trans woman.
Pretty?
No, not one of the pretty ones. Not a Blair White. Just looks like, to be honest, it looks like
you could be sued for $10,000.
Looks like one of us.
Yeah.
To be honest, no. Like I mean, I'll happily.
For yourself.
No, I think it's an absolute. It's a farce, and it's making a mockery of not just. It's not just making a mockery of women's right to have their own spaces. It's making a mockery of genuine trans people who actually put some effort in and look like a woman.
What do you mean a genuine trans
And also,
people?
if
We don't believe in that.
If your name was Roxanne, if you were going to transition, you wouldn't pick the name Roxanne Tickle. You'd choose Tess.
Tess. That's a kind of name. No, the truth is, that's one of the problems, is you get a choice of the name you're going to choose. And of course, you're going to choose like a hot Roxanne. That's a hot Roxanne. That's a great name. They're not going to choose.
You don't think Tess would work better with Tickle?
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 12. Now, we have some new information from Downing Street following the announcement from the Bank of England that interest rates will be cut from 4.75 to 4.5%.
And here to tell us more is our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, so what are the government saying about this interest rate cut then?
Yeah, hi Tom, hi Emily. That news broke midway through the morning lobby briefing with the PM's official spokesman. They, of course, welcome it. They say that they're pleased with it. They say it's a welcome news for millions of mortgage holders. Of course, those worried and were suffering under the big spike under the Liz Truss administration. It's trending down. It's the fourth cut, I think, and hopefully more planned. More difficult for the government is the growth forecast of the UK being halved by the Bank of England. Now, they say that growth is the priority for this government. They're focused on taking the necessary decisions, but they welcome the interest rate cut, but they are determined to deliver growth for us all. And the forecast inflation has now gone up under Bank of England, but they point to the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility. Their forecast is nearer to 2% for the forecast period. So good and more difficult news, I think, for the government out from the Bank of England this midday time.
We all know potentially why this interest rate cut has come, and it may well have to do with the fact that growth has been halved. In terms of forecasts, was supposed to be 1.5%, the Bank of England said, and now only 0.75%.
Well, absolutely, and the government says their response to that is that we are intent on getting to all our decisions as a government, they say, is about driving forward growth, and that's their focus. So yes, that has happened, and of course these big tax increases for the minimum wage going up for millions, but also the national insurance increase to come in April. So a big problem there going for many businesses going forward. Elsewhere, Number 10 has slapped down Kevin Badenoch's immigration plan. We've been talking about it on the news a lot on GB News. They're saying there's no evidence, the government says, that extending the period from 5 to 10 years to prove you can get your indefinite leave to remain or has a bearing on people coming here. They say that citizenship is not a pull factor in coming to the UK. And also some more news on the Chagos Islands, some more justification for why we're giving money to Mauritius, maybe £90 million a year for 100 years, to take away the Chagos Islands and then renting back the Diego Garcia military base. They say to us, which is the first time we've had this before, Tom and Emily, from the government, that we need to have access to this electromagnetic communications system. It's run by a UN body called the International Telecommunications Union. If we don't agree to hand over sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, we are now told by the government we lose access to this system, which allows the government to communicate with other governments and sole use of this system.
This is important, Chris. This is the government corroborating that Bloomberg article that came out last night.
Yes, it is.
And so now, for the first time, Downing Street are actually putting on the record why they want to pay perhaps up to £18 billion. I know that figure is disputed and they won't say a figure at the moment, but perhaps up to £18 billion, all for a bit of electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, they say they have very clear advice in the government. They won't say who it's from. I asked, is that from Lord Hermer, the Attorney General? They wouldn't say. Very clear advice that we would lose access to this electromagnetic communication system. It's based in a UN body called the International Telecommunications Union, which we fund, by the way. We gave them up to £1 million or £800,000, looking at the internet just moments ago, in 21-22. So we do fund it. But apparently, unless we do adhere to these other international legal rulings, some of which, by the way, other countries would ignore completely, we will lose access to this telecom system. So that is one reason that's the first time we've ever had this information from the government to clarify what are the security risks. But I do think there are question marks about why on earth we're giving away, maybe it's £90 million a year for 100 years. If it's £9 billion, is it double to £18 billion, including inflation? With all the pressures on costs going forward this year, people want money spent here, not necessarily overseas. They're now making finally the case for the security reason to do this deal. But I think still questions remain, Tom and Emily.
Yeah, it does seem baffling that the UN would strip one of the most important bases in the world for the United States. I mean, I just can't see that eventuality happening. I mean, this is hard power versus soft power, surely.
I mean, well, exactly. I said to them, why on earth are we in a crouch over this? We're a sovereign nation. We have access to a telecom system that we help pay for through a UN body we help fund. We're one of the 5 members of the Security Council. Despite all that, we are taking advice, very clear advice, they said. I asked, is that from Lord Hermer, the Attorney General? They wouldn't say that. They won't say where the advice comes from. But gradually, slowly, we're getting to understand this deal. I think it matters. The more people on GB News and viewers and listeners listen to the justification for this, the more I think they'll be asking questions. But it is to be welcomed that we have an open conversation about why we're doing it.
Well, finally hearing something at least. Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed, our political editor there outside Downing Street. I'm sorry, but we kind of glossed over this, but Number 10 saying that there is no evidence citizenship acts as a pull factor to come to the United Kingdom. Now, I'm just looking at some stats. 2023, over 200,000 people were granted British citizenship. So why have those people accepted that British citizenship if it's not something to come to this country for? Sorry, how can British citizenship not be a pull factor to come to this country? If I wanted to become a French citizen, I'd move to France.
I'd also question the idea that the status quo is sustainable. 6 years living in the country to become a citizen. I know many other countries around the world have far more stringent rules for people to actually become a citizen and enjoy all the rights that that entails.
It's crazy, not a pull factor. What utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Up next, despite having the warmest January on record, apparently,
Doesn't feel like it.
Britain is now facing a cold snap this weekend.
Oh, good.
Oh, brilliant. Well, we'll get the latest on that after your latest headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. The Bank of England lowered its interest rate by 0.25 percentage point today to the lowest base rate since June 2023. The rate has reduced from 4.75% to 4.5% as the bank has come under pressure to boost the UK economy. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the Bank of England would be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reducing rates further. The Shadow Chancellor has welcomed the news. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says immigrants should have to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible for British citizenship. Making one of her first policy announcements since becoming Tory leader, Badenoch also said indefinite leave to remain should not be granted to those who have criminal records or who'd claimed benefits or social housing. Ms Badenoch has also announced plans to kick out low-paid migrants and ban those who claim benefits from becoming citizens. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp told GB News there were mistakes made under the previous government and that's why under a new leader there's a new approach.
In fact, they will be asked to leave and required to leave at the end of their visa. And in fact, if they try and claim benefits before the end of their visa, then they will have the visa revoked and will be removed from the country. Because I think what the British public want to see is very small numbers of people coming in to do high-skilled jobs. What we don't want to see are people coming here who say they're going to work and then don't work, or end up in very low-paid jobs which actually don't make a contribution to the exchequer, to the taxpayer. Overall, this is quite a radical new policy.
And the Metropolitan Police has stepped up its efforts to clamp down on phone thieves, seizing 1,000 stolen mobiles and arresting 230 people in just 1 week. During a week of coordinated action across London, the force specifically targeted and clamped down on phone thieves. This included action in hotspot areas like the West End and Westminster, where nearly 40% of thefts occurred, it said. The Met Police described it as a £50 million a year trade that saw stolen phones resold abroad and in the UK. The Home Secretary is chairing a summit today with law enforcement bodies to focus on tackling the issue. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A beautiful day today for most of us, with plenty of sunshine, a little cloudier in the far southeast, increasingly so as the day progresses. And that's because the high pressure that has arrived and has brought the sunny skies is gradually moving towards the northeast. We're going to pick up a bit more of a breeze coming in from the east. That's going to drag some cloud into the far southeast. And we're also going to see on the periphery of the same high some strong winds for the west and north of Scotland. Otherwise, it's light winds, it's blue skies and plenty of sunshine, with temperatures, well, around average for the time of year, 7 to 9 Celsius, and feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Heading into the evening, we'll see a bit more of that cloud in the east and southeast progress westwards across the south and central areas. We'll also see the strong wind continuing across western Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland, with lighter winds and widespread clear skies, temperatures will fall away. Coldest places overnight likely to be southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. I think further south, with more cloud cover arriving through the evening and perhaps a few showers just about into Kent and running along the far south coast, well, that will lead to a less frosty night for many in the south compared with the previous night. And it's really towards the northwest of the UK where we keep the clear skies for longest, where we're going to see frosty conditions once again on Friday morning. Perhaps some fog patches as well for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, more cloud around during Friday morning. A chilly start for all of us, nevertheless, whether you've got the frost or not. And it's going to feel increasingly cold in the increasingly brisk breeze across the south and the east of the UK. We'll also see showers arrive into the south, and these will be a bit sleety in places, perhaps even giving a covering of snow over the Downs and the Chilterns, and then later the Welsh Mountains.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A989 remains closed each way along Tay Street in Perth because of flooding. In Stirling, the A9 is closed in both directions off the A907 off the Causeway Head roundabout after an accident causing delays. Now on the A1 in Edinburgh, there are northbound queues on the Milton Link at Brunstone because of roadworks. The Mersey Ferry suspended because of a technical problem. On the M6 in Staffordshire, there's a lane closed southbound between junctions 10A and 10 from the M54 to the Walsall Wolverhampton turn after an accident causing delays. Train services are suspended between Milford Haven and Haverfordwest because of emergency engineering works. Buses replaced trains between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey because of a faulty train. And in Surrey, the A307 is blocked by an accident on Portsmouth Road near to the Scilliars at Thames Ditton. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20 to 1. And of course, at 3 o'clock, Martin Daubney will be steering you through the afternoon. Martin, we want to talk about the local elections, because you've got some data.
Yeah, so I wonder why the Conservatives are keeping so tight-lipped on the elections being cancelled. Nigel Farage saying they're colluding together. Well, we've looked at the 9 areas where the elections have been cancelled, and it's a Tory bloodbath. Annihilation in lots of these areas for the Conservatives and Reform Party takeovers. I've got the full inside story. There's no wonder the Tories are keeping quiet because they will get a pasting in May in those areas if the elections went ahead.
Some of those councillors who came in on the Boris wave will still be there despite, you know, the mood music changing rather a lot.
They were getting like 2 or 3 years extra pay without facing the electorate. And, you know, it is a denial of democracy. I think a lot of people are very, very angry about this. It's the one thing that GBNews viewers are talking about to me all day. We've got the full inside story on the show later on.
That's very exciting stuff. We'll be eyes peeled for that, Martin, and we'll catch you up for another little tease a little bit later in this show.
Excellent
Fantastic
stuff. We'll see you later. Now get ready to bundle up because colder weather is coming to the UK this week as chilly easterly winds bring that chilly air from continental Europe.
Yes, temperatures set to dip below freezing overnight, with daytime highs below the February average. So let's talk it all through with Alex Deakin from the Met Office. Alex, I thought as we went further away from the winter solstice, we were supposed to get warmer. Isn't that how the seasons normally work?
Well, not necessarily. There's an old saying, as the days get longer, the cold gets stronger. So, you know, Europe is gradually continuing to get a little colder. The sea continues to get colder for the next month or so. So, yeah, it's not unusual for it to be cold in February after all. But, yeah, it is going to turn that much colder because our winds are swinging around. We've had a westerly wind and now we're going to get an easterly wind, which is why we're seeing temperatures dropping off somewhat this weekend. And you'll notice the wind. I think that'll be the key factor, particularly tomorrow in the south. Today's a cracking day. It's beautiful out there. Lots of sunshine and light winds. Tomorrow's going to be cloudy and that brisk easterly wind will be noticeable, definitely.
It's just far too cold. I mean, I always say this, you know, you look back at last year, it wasn't this cold at this time last year.
You've got rosy memories,
It does seem unseasonably cold. I mean, I'm just looking at London, where it's usually, you know, one of the warmest areas. We're looking at like 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. It's not getting above 10 for you know, for as far as I can see.
Yeah, and it'll feel colder because of that wind as well. But yeah, as you say, it has been actually mild, and we've always get cold snaps. But yeah, people don't really remember them, which is good, keeps me in a job. So that's good. But yeah, it is going to get colder. You will notice that. Yeah, 4 or 5 degrees. Actually, northern Scotland, that's the place to be this weekend because temperatures will be 7, 8 degrees, and it'll be sunny there, and the winds will be light. So yeah, northwest Scotland having a cracking weekend. The nights will be cold with hard frost there because there'll be clearer skies. But yeah, by day, northwest Scotland will probably be a bit warmer than London.
Road trip?
Have the tables turned then? Because famously, of course, the western part of the UK gets all the weather coming in from the Atlantic. But now with this, I'm not going to quite call it a beast from the east, but with this chill from the east, it's going to be all of the eastern side of England that gets it the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way the weather works in the UK. When the westerly winds, they're the predominant winds. We get them most of the time. So that's the typical weather. Western areas get the rain. They get hit by the winds first. They get the strongest winds. But when the winds switch around, which doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's the east that will bear the brunt, that will feel the cold. And as a result, the western areas have the best of the sunshine. It's simple, the weather in the UK, really. It's one thing or the other. But you will notice that chill this weekend, especially in London.
Don't put those scarves and gloves away too soon. Alex Deacon, thank you very much indeed for talking us through the rubbish weather.
Well, I mean, if you live in the western part of the UK, you might think, aha, finally.
I don't know.
The tables have turned.
I just looked up Bristol and they've got a bit of sleet coming.
Oh,
so
lovely.
There you go. That's nice, isn't it?
Perhaps my least favourite form of precipitation, sleet.
Pointless.
Shall we move to Rutland now, which, of course, has been referred to as a county since the 12th century. But under the government's planned reform of local government, England's smallest county could soon lose its independence.
Yeah, so the Deputy Prime Minister wants to merge district councils and counties to create new unitary authorities, which has led to Leicestershire County Council calling for its merger with Rutland.
Well, let's speak to Will Hollis now, who is in Rutland all day for us, because, Will, there's a real sense of local identity there.
Yes, 41,000 people call Rutland home, England's smallest county. But under the new proposals to merge councils that are much smaller in size, district councils and smaller unitary authorities like Rutland, into bigger 500,000 plus population councils, lots of people around the country are quite upset and scared about what it might mean for their local services. But the government thinks that this will be good for services and good for saving money. There are a lot of really strong voices here in Oakham, in Uppingham, the two big towns in Rutland. But one of the strongest voices here in the town centre, the radio presenter for Rutland and Stamford Sound, is Rob Pisani. What are your listeners saying to you here in Oakham, in Uppingham and the villages around Rutland when they may be faced with becoming part of a much bigger super council?
I think there's a huge amount of county pride, Will. Rutland, people love Rutland. They love the fact that it's slightly secret, that it's somewhere between Leicester and Peterborough, and they love the fact that they're part of a small area, that it's a very close-knit community. I think there's a reality that maybe they think, well, with the local government reorganisation, it's harder and harder for us to do it by ourselves. And if we can maybe share services, which we are already, I think that will help, and I think that's the general kind of sense of feeling. However, people don't want to lose Rutland.
I suppose it's a case of hearts over minds. The reality is that councils are struggling. I'm here that Rutland has the biggest, the largest council tax in the country. It also has its own McDonald's now, becoming part of the wider commercialised Britain that we see. Do people really feel that this could damage tourism, could damage the identity?
I think the thing is, with a small area like this, because everyone knows each other, we have our own Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, all those sort of dignitaries, which maybe don't have such a big role in a large area. But here, they're here celebrating everything that we do. And if we lose that sense of who we are, then I think people will really miss it.
That's the ceremonial status of being a county. It's been a county since 1200s. One of the things that happened in the history was Rutland did lose its independence, became a part of Leicestershire, which could be the council that swallows Rutland in a few months or years' time in the 1970s, and then it regained its independence in the 1990s. What was the strength of feeling then, and how strong is it now?
Well, I think really there was a sense that it was going to happen maybe in the 1960s. So they had a big run-up, a big campaign, right from about 1961, that they really wanted to save Rutland. When it happened, people still left the road signs up. they actually crossed out, and I was told this in a meeting just the other day, people crossed out Leicestershire on letters and wrote Rutland to, still have that sense of independence. And I think when 1997 happened, I think there was a little bit of kind of trepidation, thinking, can we do it? But 25 odd years later, and it has happened. So I think actually there's a lot to celebrate there. But,
sure,
the future maybe.
It's survived as a county now. Just really simply, do you think that a merger will happen with one of the bigger councils like Leicestershire?
I think there's a real sense of inevitability that it's going to happen, but we must keep Rutland.
Fantastic. Rob Pisani from Rutland and Stamford Sound, the local community radio station, one of the big voices here in Rutland, amplifying lots of smaller voices when people fear that their county identity could be lost, swallowed by a big super council.
I must say, Rutland looks idyllic.
Beautiful part of the country.
That looks lovely, really lovely. I've never been. Will Hollis, thank you very much indeed for your report. GB News East Midlands reporter.
Well, do stay with us here on GB News, and if you're in search for some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of our top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's been quite a wet start to the year across Iberia, and there's more rain to come for Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine, though, for Greece and across Cyprus after we had some showers here at the weekend. It is still a little on the cool side. Some showers heading into southern Italy and across Malta on Friday afternoon. Much of the south of Spain still dry at this stage, but that rain is moving in. Plenty of sunshine across the Canaries. That rain across Spain will head to the south of France as we go into the weekend, so turning wet in Nice.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 47 minutes past 12, do stay with us. Coming up, Greggs, of course known for its bakes, pies and cakes. But in a shock move, they've moved into the burger market. Watch out, McDonald's. Find out why next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into one. That's going to be my question. Into one alert.
Looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. Yes. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it and sends it out, even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 10 minutes to 1, fast food giants better watch their buns. Yes, Greggs really is raising the stakes.
Beloved bakery chain is flipping expectations with new hot menu items taking aim at McDonald's, KFC, Burger King with a new BBQ crispy chicken burger. Delicious.
Well, these new bites are rolling out to 150 shops starting today, with plans to sizzle their way into 300 more by the spring.
Well, our reporter Jack Carson is in Birmingham trying out the new delicacy for us. Jack, always the best job, so how does it taste?
Well, don't ever say that I don't give you some serious journalism sometimes. Here it is in all of its glory. This is the crispy mayo chicken burger from Greggs. As you say, they're rolling out in about 150 stores from today. They're still trying to upscale it, they hope, by spring to another 300, but that's still only about 10% of Greggs' more than 2,500 stores they've got across the country. So you really do have to be lucky if you are in a location where you can try one of these. As you were saying, this really is to try and rival the likes of other fast food chains on the high street, like McDonald's, like KFC, like Burger King, others that provide those chicken options. And here it is. So we've got a nice amount of bit of lettuce there. We've got what I would kind of say is a bit of like a breakfast roll. We've got some lettuce and some mayonnaise, and I think we'll give it a try. Give me a second. The whole world is watching.
Looks delicious to me.
I have to say, it is crispy. It's very crispy. I've probably eaten a bit too much. It's very crispy. So they tested
But
the
Jack, is it part of the meal deal? Is it part of the meal deal, Jack?
So you can get it as a meal deal. So it's £4. I shouldn't eat my mouth, or my mum's going to kill me. So it's £4 on its own as a burger. So you can get it as a meal deal for £5. So in terms of a lunchtime meal, burger, some veggies and a drink for £5. That's quite a good Great British bargain.
Goodness me, Jack, it looks a little... I mean, obviously I'm looking at this through a small monitor, but is it a bit dry? Does it look a little... Could it do with perhaps fine-tuning this recipe?
I would prefer a little bit more mayonnaise on my burger, I think. So maybe I should have bought an extra little sachet of mayonnaise to have with my burger, but you can get all kinds of different options. You can get a spicy version, a barbecue version as well. This has not necessarily been bought very recently. This has been bought for quite some time, so maybe it's not as warm, and I'm not getting the kind of experience you might get if you go in and ask for it straight away.
All right, Jack, well, we'll leave you to your delicious lunch. A little bit dry, could add some mayo, could add some BBQ sauce, but there you go.
Well, other fast food chains are, of course, available.
Absolutely.
You're watching Good Afternoon Britain.
Coming up, we're going to look at how the government is justifying delaying these local elections.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A beautiful day today for most of us, with plenty of sunshine, a little cloudier in the far southeast, increasingly so as the day progresses. And that's because the high pressure that has arrived and has brought the sunny skies is gradually moving towards the northeast. We're going to pick up a bit more of a breeze coming in from the east. That's going to drag some cloud into the far southeast. And we're also going to see on the periphery of the same high some strong winds for the west and north of Scotland. Otherwise, it's light winds, it's blue skies and plenty of sunshine with temperatures, well, around average for the time of year, 7 to 9 Celsius, and feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Heading into the evening, we'll see a bit more of that cloud in the east and southeast progress westwards across the south and central areas. We'll also see the strong wind continuing across western Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland, with lighter winds and widespread clear skies, temperatures will fall away. Coldest places overnight likely to be southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. I think further south, with more cloud cover arriving through the evening and perhaps a few showers just about into Kent and running along the far south coast, well, that will lead to a less frosty night for many in the south compared with the previous night. And it's really towards the northwest of the UK where we keep the clear skies for longest, where we're going to see frosty conditions once again on Friday morning. Perhaps some fog patches as well for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, more cloud around during Friday morning. A chilly start for all of us, nevertheless, whether you've got the frost or not. And it's going to feel increasingly cold in the increasingly brisk breeze across the south and the east of the UK. We'll also see showers arrive into the south, and these will be a bit sleety in places, perhaps even giving a covering of snow over the Downs and the Chilterns, and then later the Welsh Mountains.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a 2-man event, but 4-man's usually where we can challenge them. And yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And yeah.
So yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad, but because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Moritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics, and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them, because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
Stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 6th of February. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, do you live in Essex, Sussex, Norfolk, perhaps? You could be one of the millions without a vote or a voice this May. 9 councils representing 5 million Brits are delaying elections. Nigel Farage says the move smacks of a dictatorship.
And why is the government so desperate to give up our Chagos Islands and give away £18 billion of our money to Mauritius for the privilege? Well, new reports suggest the bizarre decision could all come down to a satellite communication system. We'll reveal all.
We will indeed. And the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, she's vowed to ban migrants who claim benefits from becoming UK citizens ever. But is it enough to win back voters from the Reform Party?
And the government will make it easier than ever for new nuclear power plants to be built as they rush to avoid net zero blackouts. Previously, just 8 sites in the UK were allowed to host nuclear power stations. Now, could one be coming to your backyard?
And could Greggs become the new favourite, not only for those sausage rolls, but burgers too? We've sent our reporter Jack Carson out and about to try the new recipe. Are you excited about these new nuclear power plants then, Tom? This is very much up your street.
I am, actually. I think this is one of the consequences, I think, of such a bad budget back in October. Now the government is rushing to try and make amends. So they've actually announced some really good things. The airport expansion decisions have been very positive. And now this energy infrastructure expediting seems to be incredibly positive too.
Energy infrastructure expediting. Don't trademark that.
Yeah, I'll get the .com. But I mean, it is crazy that only 8 parts of this country were allowed to host nuclear power stations by law. And now, this whole new proposal from the government, there are going to be more sites that can have nuclear power stations. People that live near those stations will get money because they'll be disturbed, or perhaps they just won't like living near one. Personally, I'd love to live near a nuclear power station. I think it'd be very cool. But it's interesting.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at a map of like where wealth is in the United Kingdom, Copeland, up in the northwest, is always a shining beacon of being a much wealthier place than anywhere around.
Just because it's radioactive.
Very good. But no, it brings high-paying jobs, and
we need some of those.
Spills over to the local economy.
One of the biggest problems in this country is that there are so many low-paid jobs. You know, we just go, oh, you know, this 40k job, that's a fantastic salary. It shouldn't be.
But speaking of the economy, I believe the Prime Minister is delivering a press conference. Let's go straight to it. Oh, I'm so sorry. We're going to go to the bulletins first because the Prime Minister is not yet speaking. So do stay with us. We're on tenterhooks here, but that's all to come after your latest news headlines.
Tom, thank you very much. The top stories. The Bank of England lowered the interest rate by a quarter of a percentage point to the lowest base rate since June 2023. The rate has reduced from 4.75% to 4.5% as the bank has come under pressure to boost the UK economy. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the Bank of England would be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reduce rates further. The Shadow Chancellor has called it welcome news. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says immigrants should have to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible for British citizenship. Making one of her first policy announcements since becoming leader, Badenoch also said indefinite leave to remain should not be granted to those who have criminal records or who'd claimed benefits or social housing. Ms Badenoch has also announced plans to kick out low-paid migrants. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp told GB News there were mistakes made under the previous government, and that's why under a new leader, there's a new approach.
In fact, they will be asked to leave and required to leave at the end of their visa. And in fact, if they try and claim benefits before the end of their visa, then they will have the visa revoked and will be removed from the country. Because I think what the British public want to see is very small numbers of people coming in to do high-skilled jobs. What we don't want to see are people coming here who say they're going to work and then don't work, or end up in very low-paid jobs which actually don't make a contribution to the exchequer, to the taxpayer. Overall, this is quite a radical new policy.
The move comes just a day after the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner confirmed local elections in 9 council areas will be postponed until 2026 as part of its reforms of local government. Leader of Reform UK Nigel Farage had this to say.
There is no justification for cancelling these elections whatsoever, other than sheer cowardice of what reform might do to them in those campaigns.
Some breaking news this hour. The Foreign Office has announced that a Russian diplomat has had their accreditation revoked by the UK. It is reportedly in a tit-for-tat move after a British diplomat was expelled from Moscow last year. Russian ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kelin, was summoned to the Foreign Office to be informed of the move by the government. More on this as we get it. Elsewhere, the government has announced plans to make it easier to build mini nuclear power stations in England and Wales as part of its efforts to boost economic growth in the country. The Prime Minister announced that more nuclear power plants will be approved as red tape will be, he says, slashed. The reforms will clear a path for so-called small modular reactors to be built for the first time in the UK, which ministers say would help to deliver clean, secure and more affordable energy. The government announced that archaic rules will be ripped up while growth will be prioritised instead of NIMBYs. Let's take you to the Prime Minister who's speaking to small business owners.
In the business, in the sector, but actually doing something incredibly important for the country. And as we go towards clean power, you're going to be just more and more important. So thank you. And it's fantastic to have that uplifting sense of purpose and pride that you have. And you should, because you're doing a really brilliant job on behalf of your country. And that really fits with what we have to say today, because we in the UK used to be leaders when it came to nuclear. The first, in 1956, the first nuclear power station. And then, if you can believe it, 21 reactors in less than 10 years. That is an incredible part of our history as a nuclear nation. My frustration, and possibly yours, is that that all then slowed down in the last 15 years or so. It's ground almost to a halt with this sense that nuclear isn't even part of the mix for the future. And I think we've lost opportunities there. I think it's cost us as a nation. And that's what we're turning around. And turning it around in terms of the big decisions we're making that are across the board, whether it comes to planning, innovation, infrastructure, but particularly on nuclear. And you, I hope, will have seen some of the material we're putting out today, the statement we're making today, a really important statement, the first national statement since 2011. Seems to me it's long overdue, but really ambitious, which means that we're going for innovation, technology, small modular, which I think will be a huge part of the future that you will all be working on. And, of course, making it more available in different places. As you know, there's only 8 sites at the moment where we can develop. From today onwards, many other sites can come forward. The potential for that's huge. Because, you know, whether it's in the traditional sectors or whether it's the AI data centres that need to be built, now you can think of the future, which is the reactor there powering the data centre. It's going to really transform the way that we go forward. So this is a real game changer when it comes to nuclear. It's part of a bigger story about clean power and making sure that we hit that clean power as we go forward. Nuclear is a part of that. And what that gives us, of course, hugely importantly, is lower bills, stability, because if we push on what you're doing within your sector, it means that we're in control of our energy. It's not subject to international volatility, and Putin can't put his boot on our throat. So what I just elevated what you're doing beyond the national to the international here, but that's how important it is, and it's part of our determination to push our country forward. We were a leader in nuclear. I'm determined we're going to be a leader again, and today is a huge step forward. We're now going to take some questions from you. So over to you. Ed and I will do them together. Ask them about your sector or ask them about anything. We're accountable to you, so you're perfectly entitled to use this opportunity to lob in anything that you want to ask us about anything. If it's about your sector, of course, or about the announcement today, fantastic. But if you also want to ask something else, don't feel inhibited. We want to hear from you. We're going to try and do this to bring in those that are behind us as well. But do we have a first question from someone, anyone? Yep.
Yep, Josh Whitworth, UK NNL Prospect Branch Chair. My question is, in light of today's announcement, will we expect to see nuclear prioritised in the spending review?
Yes, we've already made it clear. I mean, Ed will want this. But we've got 5 big priorities. One of them is clean power by 2030, and nuclear is part of that mix. And therefore, it has to be within that mission, which is already a priority for us. So as we go into the spending review, that'll be really, really important. It's not all about the spending review, because what today does is unlock the private investment that will come in. You know, there are obvious places. There's the nuclear side for the investment to come in, but there's also the AI side, because a lot of AI, you know, big players are looking to say, well, how can I get my data centre set up? They're worried that they haven't got the power to sit alongside it. So they're also wanting to look at this and say, how does that allow us to do bigger investment into the UK as well? And I think bringing that money in, creating the jobs of the future, is very much part of what we're doing. Ed, you probably want to make a pitch.
Yeah, no, maybe not make a pitch here, but the one thing that I would add is I think the Chancellor showed her commitment to this in the allocation she made for Sizewell in the budget. It's something that she sees as absolutely fundamental, not just to energy security, but also her plans for economic growth.
Yeah. So it means a lot more work for you, I'm afraid, as we go forward here. Let's go to another question somewhere, anywhere. Yes, I saw the young lady here.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Annie, I'm a project manager. So my question to you is, what will the government do to diversify the sector by promoting STEM within schools?
Ed, do you want to start on that? Because I just need
Yeah. Look, it's a really good question. Can I ask you a question? How did you get into this sector?
I used to be a science teacher, but I have a background in STEM, personally.
And look, I think part of this is about what happens in schools, but I think part of it is about what government does to champion this sector and show what it can do. Because my impression, Kira and I were just talking about this, going around talking to people, is so many people said the similar thing to us. We're building the future here. Yeah. We're about the future for the country. And I think not enough people know about the opportunities that there are. And I think one of the things that we need to do as government, my job, not just Bridget Phillipson's job as Education Secretary, is to sort of say these are the opportunities for people. Nobody knows what a green job is, but if you say it's a job working in the nuclear industry, planning the future of the nuclear industry, that is meaningful to people.
2 or 3 things extra on that, because I think STEM is really important. We need to make sure that the curriculum in schools matches up with the jobs that people are going to do. And that's another piece of work that we're doing, so that people are skilled in the jobs that they're going to do. I've been really struck here, by the way, about the story about apprentices. Because, I mean, you know this stat, but it really is an incredible stat, and particularly uplifting for the apprentices in the room, which is 30% of the workforce here, as I understand it, are apprentices, or were apprentices, and 50% of the executive team were apprentices, which just shows you the power of going through that route. So I think that's something to be championed. The last thing I'd say, and this is on all of you, get into your schools, get into your colleges, because you know, children, young people can't aspire to do something if they don't know what it is. And if you go to them or bring them in here, if they saw what we've seen this morning about what you're doing, they would say, I think I want to do that because I want to work in that sector. And so the biggest thing you can do is to inspire them, is sort of open the doors and let them see what you're doing. I did see a hand over here somewhere.
Mr Prime Minister, my name is Ishmael Patel. I work in IT. As a fellow Arsenal fan, I won't ask about yesterday's result.
No, it's good to be out of that competition. It's a brilliant game strategy, in my view.
Exactly. My question is, what role do you see nuclear energy playing to support the growth of the wider economy?
I think it's got a huge role to play, because we've got sort of 5 big things that we need to fix, but the number one is getting our economy to grow, and to grow faster. And so we're putting a lot of energy into the actions that we're taking there. And energy is a key part of that. If you talk to any business across the country and say, what are the problems you've been facing, they will say our energy prices have gone up and down, they're too volatile, particularly last through a few years. We need some certainty in what we're doing. We need to drive forward to the next generation of jobs. AI sector will say to us, we will invest in the UK, but you need to show us that you can power up what we need to build. So this is going to be a big game changer when it comes to growing our economy. It has to come with the big stuff that we're doing, because you will feel this. I mean, any nuclear infrastructure takes forever to get done. Look at you know, what's been going on at Hinkley. And that's why not just the stuff we've announced today, but the stuff we've announced on planning and making sure the processes are quicker, that it can't be challenged over and over again in court, is going to speed that up. That means that stuff can be built more quickly. We think that some of what we're announcing today can be pushed through by 2032, so that's a really tight frame. But look, I mean, look what we did before, 21, that's what I said at the beginning, 21 reactors in less than 10 years. You know, we were the first in 1956. We've got to get back into that mentality of why not the UK? We're good at this, we can push this forward, it's really good for our economy, and we should go for it and bring all these parts together. Ed, over to you.
Just one other thing quickly to add, which is we're entering an age of electricity. We know electricity demand is going to double by 2050 or more than double by 20. We need all of this technology. We need nuclear, we need renewables, we need carbon capture and storage, we need hydrogen. All of these things are absolutely essential, and nuclear has a really, really important part to play.
Now, I'm going to step forward and just do some media, and then I'm going to come. Please don't all go away, because I want to come back and just talk to you a bit more. So I'll just do this, and then I'll come back and we can have some further discussions. But just to say again, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hosting us. Thanks for uplifting us. You've made us feel uplifted about what you're doing. So if we feel proud of what you're doing, you're entitled to feel proud of what you're doing. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was the Prime Minister speaking in front of many individuals working in the nuclear industry, an industry that the United Kingdom used to lead on. The first commercial nuclear power plant in the world was built in this country. But as the Prime Minister was saying, we really have slowed down on this industry. The last nuclear power station to be built was approved by Margaret Thatcher.
I mean, was it because of all the green activism? Was it because it was just unfashionable?
I think green activism played a lot in this, which is so ironic, because it's a green form of energy. And we know that France, for example, has way lower carbon emissions than we do, because it has a base load of nuclear power that provides 70% of its electricity.
The only thing I'm concerned about is these infrastructure projects seem to always take huge amounts of time, much longer than were expected and told, and cost so much money. But joining us now is Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. Anna, thank you very much for joining us on this one. So, big announcements from Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband there, of course. This is very much his brief. What does this actually mean for us?
Well, it is an exciting potential technology. Small new modular reactors are the future, as many people think. So essentially, it's a way of having nuclear energy in a much smaller area. There are even certain companies that are trying to develop almost flat-back modular reactors where you can really quickly build this technology and have it power not that many homes, but sort of your local area, for example. And the idea behind this is it will be easier to get through because it's not such an eyesore, it wouldn't take up so much space, it wouldn't be as much opposition. And of course, for energy security, there is a desperate need to build other sources of energy to make us less dependent on gas and anything from elsewhere, from other countries. So it all sounds great. The Conservatives were looking at this as well. The slight problem with the plan is the technology doesn't exist yet. So there are quite a few companies working to develop it, but no one has successfully done this yet. That's not to say that it isn't important to highlight it and put money into it. And I think Keir Starmer's announcement that he is willing to rip up planning laws for it is a good thing. So, but the question is, will it actually be deliverable?
I suppose there are some big questions that the details simply haven't been announced yet. So I was reading through the press release from the government a little bit earlier, and I was amazed actually at how little detail there was. I mean, when are we going to get our next nuclear power station? We're not sure. The Prime Minister just then saying that it could be by 2032, but we don't know where it would be. We don't know the size of it. We don't know who's going to build it, who's going to fund it. There's a lot of unanswered questions here.
That's right. And if you think about it, 2032, while, of course, in the scheme of things, compared to other nuclear projects and upgrades, that is quite fast, that still doesn't deliver that short-term growth that the government urgently needs. So essentially, it's almost a strategy, I think, of when they get to the next election, to be able to say to voters, look, We've got things almost coming down the line. You know, we're ready to deliver things. Give us another chance. Let us carry on with the job. I think that is what a lot of this is about.
Yeah.
And the problem they will have is people want to see results now. People want to see the cost of living eased now. You know, in terms of going for growth, yes, it is a strategy. And for energy security, absolutely. As I say, the last government were developing it in the same way. But there are a lot of question marks. A lot of the uncertainty is purely because the technology doesn't actually yet exist.
But to be fair, we've often complained about successive governments just thinking about the short term. So if there is some long-term planning going on for the future of our energy security, I suppose that is a good thing. Anna Mikhailova, thank you very much indeed, Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday. I just hope they will get built and built pretty sharpish and at not too much cost to us.
Yeah, that's the big question. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come. Indeed, why some NHS trusts are resisting the government's pledge to reduce diversity and equality roles. Very expensive roles, some of these, within the service. That next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs, you know. Remember, they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But, look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin, and the last thing I need to do is go and get in, you know, in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, you know, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, you know, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, you know, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, you know, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, you know, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 24 minutes past 1, we're going to dive into a controversial topic. Despite the government pledging to crack down on NHS diversity drives, the health service is continuing to advertise dozens of so-called DEI diversity jobs with salaries of up to £123,000.
Yeah, so one such example is that of an Associate Dean position, which will have a focus on equality, diversity and inclusion in the South West England region, which offers entry-level pay of up to 3 NHS doctors or 4 nurses. So critics are saying the NHS needs to scrap these roles entirely and redirect the funds to frontline health staff.
Well, let's get the thoughts of diversity facilitator Katie John Went. Katie, thanks for being with us. The Health Secretary had something to say on this a little bit earlier this week, saying that many of these jobs, I mean, there was one job in a part of the country that focused on anti-whiteness. I mean, these jobs do sound bizarre in some cases.
Offensive.
I mean, it can be that kind of DEI gets a bad name for itself when some things appear to go too far. But the core of DEI work is kind of anti-disability discrimination, anti-racism, providing equal opportunity for people from a range of backgrounds. We've seen the number of women doctors and the number of black doctors, etc., become massively increased within the NHS. And that's been absolutely necessary. It's been well known that for 10 plus years, it actually made worse during kind of the initial stages of Brexit, of course, as well, with doctors heading back to European countries. But we actually have that shortage of 10% of nurses and around 4 or 5% of doctors still. And unless you actually look into all of the talent pools for medicine, you're not going to plug those gaps. And it also is far more likely to be kind of comfortable for patients if they see a diverse representation of themselves in the people treating them.
And in fact, we actually have a massive... The NHS is one of the most diverse employers in the world, probably. Katie. So I think, you know, whatever colour you are, you probably are likely to find someone working at the NHS who looks a little bit like you, if that matters to you for some reason, which I don't think it matters to everyone, to be honest. But it's just another layer of bureaucracy, isn't it? You know, why can't the HR manager do this as part of their brief, you know, just worrying about potentially unequal outcomes?
I'm so sorry, we're going to have to interrupt. Donald Trump is speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast. Let's go live to the United States.
Yankee Stadium, I remember it so well. I remember it more than I remember any Yankee game, and I've seen a lot of Yankee games. Can you believe it? And Billy didn't have a bat, so, you know, it was just pretty good. It was amazing. You'd have 60 or 70,000 people, and they loved him. They loved him. I saw him with Franklin. I don't know if Franklin's here. I just don't know, but I've gotten to know Franklin. He's done a great job with helping on tragedies, on problems like in North Carolina, California. He's always the first one there. The work he does is, his father's very proud of him, I can tell you that. But Billy Graham was very special. One floor below us, Reverend Graham's statue stands with an open Bible. The page turned to a letter from the Apostle Paul, which reads, "Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Never give up. Never, ever give up. You can't. How about me? If I would have given up, I would not be here right now. Who the hell knows where I'd be? It might not be a good place. If it was up to the Democrats, it would not be a good place at all. Never, ever give up. There could be no better message for the leaders gathered here, and you are real leaders. And we must never give up, and we must never grow tired. We must never grow weary, and we always must practice good. As you know, last week, only a few miles from here, our nation witnessed a terrible tragedy when 67 people were killed in a horrible accident near Reagan Airport. As one nation, we take solace in the knowledge that their journey that night did not end in the icy waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a very loving God. None of us knows exactly when our time on earth will be over. You never know. A truth I confronted a few short months ago when there was an incident that was not fun. It was not a good thing. But God was watching me. The chances of me being here, my sons are shooters. They're really good shooters, Don and Eric. And they said the chances of missing from that range with that gun are, Don equated it to a 1-foot putt. That's pretty bad. 2 feet I can see missing, but 1 foot you can't miss. It was the equivalent of a 1-foot putt is what he told me. He said, in fact, he gained some religion. He went up 25%. And if you know him, that's a lot. But he said there had to be somebody that saved you, and I think I know who it is. And he looked up, and I said, "Whoa, Don, you've come a long way." He's a good guy, but my two sons just really couldn't believe it. Had I not turned that right turn just at that time, and the audience, 55,000 people standing this way, there were just a few people in the back on the bleachers. There was nobody over there except for my all-time favorite chart in history, a chart on immigration. Immigration saved my life, see? So we're going to be good for immigration, okay? But had I not made that turn, boom, and quickly, it was almost as though a deer bolted. You know, they say the only way you miss when you're a good shot is if it bolts. I bolted. I turned to the right to look at the chart, and I said, wow, what was that? What was that? So you never know, but God did that. I mean, it had to be. The chances of turning, there's no reason to turn to the right. You know, the chart is rarely brought down. I brought it down maybe 20%, and 20% of the time. And it's never on my right, it's always on my left. And it's always at the end of the speech, never the beginning of the speech. And if I was a little more than that 90-degree angle, it would be no good. And if I was a little less, it would be no good. It had to be perfect. The thing went right along the edge. It didn't affect my hair. Can you believe that? Might have touched it, but not where it counts. Not the skin part. But honestly, it's a mirror. It changed something in me. I feel even stronger. I believed in God, but I feel much more strongly about it. Something happened. So, thank you. Thank you. But that event, like the tragedy last week, should remind us all that we have to make the most out of every single day that we have. Who would think that you're in space and two things collide? The odds of that happening are so small, even without proper control. We should have had the proper control. We should have had better equipment. We don't. We have obsolete equipment. They were understaffed for whatever reason. I guess the helicopter was high, and we'll find out exactly what happened. But the odds, even if you had nothing, if you had nobody, the odds of that happening are extremely small. It's like, did you ever see, you go to a driving range in golf and you're hitting balls, hundreds of balls, thousands of hours. I never see a ball hit another ball. Balls going up all over the place, you never see them hit. It was amazing that could happen. There was a lot of mistakes made, and it should have never happened. But regardless of that, it's amazing that it happened. And I think that's going to be used for good. I think what is going to happen is we're all going to sit down and do a great computerized system for our control towers, brand new, not pieced together, obsolete like it is land-based, trying to hook up a land-based system to a satellite system. And the first thing that some experts told me when this happened is, you can't hook up land to satellites and you can't hook up satellites to land. It doesn't work. We spent billions and billions of dollars trying to renovate an old broken system instead of just saying, cut it loose, and let's spend less money and build a great system done by 2 or 3 companies, very good companies, specialists, that's all it is. They used 39 companies. That means that 39 different hookups have to happen. And I don't know how many people of you are good in terms of all of the kind of things necessary for that, and it's very complex stuff. But when you have 39 different companies working on hooking up, different cities had different people, you need one company with one set of equipment. And there are some countries that have unbelievable air controller systems, and bells would have gone off when that helicopter literally even hit the same height, because it traveled a long distance before it hit. It was just wouldn't stop. It was, follow the line. But bells and whistles would have gone off. They have them where it actually could virtually turn the thing around. It would have just never happened if we had the right equipment. And one of the things that's going to be, I'm going to be speaking to John and to Mike and to Chuck and to everybody. We have to get together and just, as a single bill, just pass where we get the best control system. When I land in my plane, privately, I use a system from another country because my captain tells me I'm landing in New York and I'm using a system. I won't tell you what country, but I use a system from another country because the captain says this thing is so bad, it's so obsolete, and we can't have that. So we're going to have the best system, and a lot of money, but it's not that much money. And it'll happen fast, and it'll be done by total professionals. And when it's done, you're not going to have accidents. It's just not, they're virtually not possible to have. Each of us is blessed with a precious chance to help lead America to renew our pledges of faith and everything else, and bring us to new heights and create a future of promise for our people and for ourselves. You know, we have the most important people in the country in a true sense here, because you're the ones that are going to make the decision. You're the ones that are leading us into so many different things, whether it's the right air control system or the right size military or what to do and what not to do. Most important people. And many of you are very religious. I know so many of you are very religious. I just think that our country has been so badly hurt. We're very hurt by what COVID did to religion. It really hurt it badly. People couldn't go to church for a long period of time. Even going outside, they were given a hard time. And I'm not blaming anybody for that, but it was very hard to gather. So they start using computers, if that. And when they come back, it's just, you know, a whole new experience they have to get used to. But it is starting to come back. We had a fantastic thing happen yesterday. The Army had the best recruitment numbers that they've had in more than 15 years. They think it could be 25 years, actually. They're going to probably put that out, but more than 15 years just now. And we were worried about it. We were talking about it numerous times that, you know, we don't have people joining our military services. We don't have people joining our police force. We have to cherish our police. It's so dangerous. You open a car and somebody starts shooting. They have blackened windows. You don't even have any idea who's in the car. Oftentimes they have the dark windows, which are not, in theory, supposed to have, but they have them. The door opens and a gun is pointed at your face, and you can't do a thing about it. It's just nothing you're going to do about it. Your friends will take them out. It's happened so many times, but it's such a dangerous thing. We have to cherish these people. So today we join our hearts and prayers in recommitting to putting our country first. We have to put our country first, making America stronger and greater and more exceptional than ever before. And we have to make religion a much more important factor now. We have to make it an important factor. And if we do that, our job is just going to be much easier. It unifies people. It brings people together. Democrats are going to be able to have lunch again and dinner with Republicans. And I remember just as growing up, I'd see, you know, I revered senators and congressmen or something very special, but they were out to dinner all the time. We had an old congressman, maybe some of Cy Halpern from Queens, and he was a friend of my father. But he'd have dinner he was a Democrat, he'd have dinner with Republicans, and he'd be out. It wouldn't even make a difference. Today, it's like shocking. And it shouldn't be. You have to get together. We really have to get together. We all know what's right and what's wrong, and there's going to be compromise on both sides. But we have to just do the right thing, and we have to get together. You did it with Marco Rubio. You got everybody who was 99 votes, and the only vote was our VP, who maybe we should have been there just to make it 100. But I think I would have been angered if it was 100. That might be a step too far, right? But no, it was great to see a vote. Pam Bondi had support from Democrats, and some of the others had some pretty good support. So, you know, it's doable. We had a recent bill having to do with a very beautiful young lady who was killed from Georgia. And that bill was very bipartisan. It was a very beautiful thing to watch, actually. And so I think we just have to, if possible, we have to unify. There's big division. I mean, some people want an open border and some people want a closed border. We want it closed and they want it open. And that's a big difference. How do you solve that problem? It's a big difference. Some people want men and women's sports and some people don't. And I was with somebody yesterday who was so upset that the bill was signed where men cannot participate in women's sports. And I said, he's a very smart guy, went to a great school, was a great student, and he actually feels, you know, that should happen. Men should be able to play, meaning transition into women's sports. And you talk to him and it says, you know, I don't understand it. I don't understand how the problem ever got started in the first place. It just seems so simple. But he's a good person and just believes it. He just believes it. Not going to be easy to convince him otherwise. So where is the middle ground? It's hard to have a middle ground. There's two ways. I mean, you can either do it or you can't. But I think a lot of good things are going to happen. You know, a lot of people might be surprised to hear me say that of all people, but I think a lot of good things are going to happen because our country's got some big headaches, but we have tremendous spirit right now. The spirit is as high as it's been. It was up 49 points this morning. 49 points. It's the biggest increase in the history of whatever the poll was. So the spirit is there. That's a big factor. That's probably the hardest thing to get back, to be honest. The rest is easy. The rest is easy. So I want to just thank you all. I want to congratulate a lot of the new members. I see so many of you that ran great races, David. That was a great race. But so many that ran great races, and on both sides. You ran some incredible races, so it's good to be with you. And God bless everybody. We want to come together, and the happiest, the person, the element, the everything that's going to be happy. People of religion are going to be happy again. And I really believe you can't be happy without religion, without that belief. I really believe it. I just don't see how you can be. So let's bring religion back. Let's bring God back into our lives. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Thank you.
Well, there is the President of the United States speaking at the first National Prayer Breakfast. He has to leave the Capitol now to go to a second National Prayer Breakfast. These prayer breakfasts are very important in American politics. It's been going on since the 1950s, a chance for the President to tell a very religious society just how much he respects religion. He's there with the Speaker, Mike Johnson, there on the floor of the Capitol.
Yeah, and he says we have to bring religion back to the United States, I suppose, or the world in general, showing how much he appreciates, presumably, Christianity as well as other religions. And he also spoke about a lot, didn't he? He sort of weaved in and out as he does from things. He spoke about the helicopter crash and the victims of that. He spoke about trans people in sports and how he had a conversation with a young man who disagreed with him on that. It was quite a softly spoken address.
He also had a bit of an introspective moment about his own attempted assassination. When the bullet shaved his ear, he injected some humour there, saying, well, it missed his hair, and perhaps Jesus had a role in that. I know he's spoken about that before.
If someone had attempted to assassinate me in front of a crowd of people while delivering a speech, terrifying to even stand up in front of a group of people anywhere.
Yeah, it must have a profound effect. It must have a profound effect on you. But I do find it interesting, Donald Trump's sort of association with religion. I've heard him speak a lot about how he respects people who are deeply religious. But whenever he's asked a question about his own personal faith, or whether he prays, for instance, or things like that, he tends to pivot and talk about how much he respects people who are deeply religious. It's a sort of interesting parallel there.
I sort of feel that way. I don't tend to go to church or pray too much, but I think it's a good thing to do. And I think that it benefits society, community, respect, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I know in so many parts of America, the church is still that sort of hub of community that perhaps it isn't so much in the United Kingdom anymore.
Moral guidance. So there you go. That was Donald Trump in Washington. But we're going to have a little look at some of the weather forecast, but for the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's been quite a wet start to the year across Iberia, and there's more rain to come for Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine, though, for Greece and across Cyprus after we had some showers here at the weekend. It is still a little on the cool side. Some showers heading into southern Italy and across Malta on Friday afternoon. Much of the south of Spain still dry at this stage, but that rain is moving in. Plenty of sunshine across the Canaries. That rain across Spain will head to the south of France as we go into the weekend, so turning wet in Nice.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Coming up, we're going to be back in Rutland, where locals are fighting against being absorbed into Leicestershire. Yes, Rutland, a proud, independent, small but perfectly formed county.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
And he's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Me.
Oh, there he goes. Nice. He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
That's
probably
nice.
Slightly more meaningful than having the villainous England.
Oh, come on, Trey, you won't get Feathers McGraw.
Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind. You know when you go abroad and Ibiza or Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that, yeah. Or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but yeah, I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean something.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll get something.
I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out with
something chaotic.
A disaster could happen. Then I walk out. Oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 2 o'clock. And Rutland has been referred to as a county since the 12th century. But under the government's planned reforms to local government, England's smallest county could soon lose its independence.
Yes, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, she wants to merge district councils and counties to create new unitary authorities. Now, this, of course, is going to affect the local elections, where about 5 million people won't be able to vote this time around. But also, it's led to Leicestershire County Council calling for its merger with Rutland.
Let's go live to Will Hollis, our intrepid reporter, spending the day in lovely Rutland. So, Will, what's going on?
Good afternoon. There are two big towns, we should say, in England's smallest county, Rutland. One of them is Uppingham, but right now we're here in Oakham. Around 12,000 people call this part of Rutland their home. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, as well as being the head of Housing and Communities and Local Government, says that there's going to be a generational shift, closing down smaller councils, creating big super councils that will serve some 500,000 people. So what will that mean for little old Rutland, England's smallest county of 41,000 people? Well, let's ask somebody with 50+ years of history in local government, Ron Simpson, who's here today representing the Countryside charity. Ron, how big of a shift is what the government proposing to close down smaller councils in favour of bigger ones?
It would represent a really big change for somewhere like Rutland, and those of us who are old enough to remember the history would realise that we were part of something bigger. We managed to become independent here in Rutland, and therefore you can understand why there's a little trepidation about what the outcome might be this time. But there are real issues now that perhaps make the occasion important. Everybody here loves Rutland. It's a great place to live. It's challenging in terms of its budget because of its poor funding formula it's had for many years. So despite the County Council here delivering, many good services, the reality is we probably do need a more strategic level of authority to ensure that the public services people expect these days in the countryside can be delivered.
The government says that devolution is the way to have a better funding model for councils. There are so many councils that have been failing in the last 10 years, handing in those Section 114 notices, essentially becoming bankrupt, and the government says that bigger councils will be able to weather those financial storms, higher costs for adult health and social care. Do you think that's going to work, or do you think that's going to be bigger councils, bigger problems?
The theory's good, but it was Birmingham, was it not, who had financial difficulties, so big isn't automatically good. But certainly in terms of the range of skills required now, local authorities have tremendous range of duties now and services they need to deliver. You need to be able to work at scale. So yes, I think everybody really loves local. We love our local high streets here and local businesses. But in terms of major services, and something like, say, strategic planning, which is becoming ever more important, if we're going to have mini nuclear reactors and so on, where they're going to go, then you do need some sort of combined authority structure. So someone like me with a background in local government would say, yes, basically supportive of devolution. We need that strategic level of decision making, but somewhere in there we need to try and preserve this, beautiful historic county, its memories, its Lord Lieutenant, who's a very positive person. Sure. And there must be a way forward that achieves both those aims.
Ron Simpson, thank you so much for speaking to us from the Countryside charity. 50+ years in local government, one of the loudest voices in here, raising the issue of what might happen to England's smallest county if it merges with a much larger council like Leicestershire, here in the heart of rural England.
Well, Will Hollis, thanks so much for being there for us all day. We'll catch up with you a little bit later, of course. It's not just Rutland, of course. Essex, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Norfolk, Suffolk, Surrey, Thurrock, West Sussex, all of them not having elections, actually. But we're going to have more on that in the next hour, including a lot more on this nuclear rollout too. Don't go anywhere.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A beautiful day today for most of us, with plenty of sunshine, a little cloudier in the far southeast, increasingly so as the day progresses. And that's because the high pressure that has arrived and has brought the sunny skies is gradually moving towards the northeast. We're going to pick up a bit more of a breeze coming in from the east. That's going to drag some cloud into the far southeast. And we're also going to see on the periphery of the same high some strong winds for the west and north of Scotland. Otherwise, it's light winds, it's blue skies and plenty of sunshine with temperatures, well, around average for the time of year, 7 to 9 Celsius, and feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Heading into the evening, we'll see a bit more of that cloud in the east and southeast progress westwards across the south and central areas. We'll also see the strong wind continuing across western Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland, with lighter winds and widespread clear skies, temperatures will fall away. Coldest places overnight likely to be southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. I think further south, with more cloud cover arriving through the evening and perhaps a few showers just about into Kent and running along the far south coast, well, that will lead to a less frosty night for many in the south compared with the previous night. And it's really towards the northwest of the UK where we keep the clear skies for longest, where we're going to see frosty conditions once again on Friday morning. Perhaps some fog patches as well for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, more cloud around during Friday morning. A chilly start for all of us, nevertheless, whether you've got the frost or not. And going to feel increasingly cold in the increasingly brisk breeze across the south and the east of the UK. We'll also see showers arrive into the south, and these will be a bit sleety in places, perhaps even giving a covering of snow over the Downs and the Chilterns, and then later the Welsh Mountains.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 6th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Do you live in Essex, perhaps Sussex, or Norfolk? Well, if so, you'll be one of the millions without a vote or a voice this May. 9 councils representing 5 million Brits are all delaying elections. Nigel Farage says the move smacks of dictatorship.
He does indeed. And why? Why is the government so desperate to give up the Chagos Islands and give away up to £18 billion of our money to Mauritius? Well, new reports suggest the bizarre decision could all come down to a satellite communication system. We'll reveal all.
And the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch has vowed to ban migrants who claim benefits ever from becoming UK citizens. But is this new policy enough to win back voters from reform?
And the government will make it easier than ever for new nuclear power plants to be built as they rush to avoid these net zero blackouts. Previously, just 8 sites in the UK were allowed to host nuclear power stations. Could one be coming to your backyard?
Well, at midday today, we learnt that the Bank of England is cutting interest rates down from 4.75 to 4.5%. But it's the analysis the Bank of England put out alongside that decision that perhaps is cause for concern.
Well, they've slashed growth forecasts for one, haven't they?
They have.
By half. 1.5, not great anyway, was the original thought. Now 0.75. Now, the government keep coming out and telling us growth is not just a priority, it's the #1 priority for this government. But everyone you speak to is slashing forecasts left, right and centre. Now, so what's going on?
If we're having 0.75% growth in 2025, as the Bank of England now has in their official forecast, and migration is anywhere like the level it was last year, we are seeing per capita GDP contraction this year.
Poorer and poorer and poorer.
That's a pretty significant statement. But also, it's not just per capita contraction. The Bank of England announced that they've analysed the fourth quarter, so the final 3 months of last year. The economy shrank across the entire quarter by 0.1%. So we've had now a quarter of negative growth. If there is another quarter, if this quarter has negative growth as well, that's 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. That's the technical and official definition of a recession.
Yeah, well, it might have something to do with the numbers of people who are here who don't work. That might have something to do with it. Or the fact that productivity is so low. And also because of the tax burden, I would hazard a guess. And perhaps the fact that the government have previously down-talked the country to a great extent. It all adds up, doesn't it? Millionaires leaving won't help either.
I'm encouraged by some of what the Chancellor's been saying in the last 2 weeks alone.
I hope you're right to be encouraged.
I'm encouraged by what she's saying, but I'm surprised that Parliament this week, on at least 2 days, sort of shut up shop at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Parliament, of course, can run into late in the night if it wants to, if they actually want to pass some laws. But despite all the announcements from the Chancellor and from various other ministers, I mean, we've been hearing from Ed Miliband today, where's the legislation? Why are these MPs being sent home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? They only get there at 11.
Well, they believe in, work-life balance. Angela Rayner doesn't think you should work past your allotted time. And if your boss calls you, you should be able to just blink them. So there you go. That's feeding into Parliament.
I'm suspicious of Parliament wrapping up so early this week, as it's done on multiple days.
Although more laws isn't always the best thing, is it?
That's true. But they could be. They could be working blooming hard to repeal some laws.
That would be quite nice.
That would be a good use of MP's time.
gbnews.com/your say. Sorry to be a bit miserable about the economic state of things, but that's just how it is, isn't it? Anyway, it's your headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. The Bank of England lowered the interest rate by 0.25 percentage point to the lowest base rate since June 2023. The rate has reduced from 4.75% to 4.5% as the bank had come under pressure to boost the UK economy. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the Bank of England would be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reducing rates further. The Shadow Chancellor has called it welcome news. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says immigrants should have to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible for British citizenship. Making one of her first policy announcements since becoming leader, Badenoch also said indefinite leave to remain should not be granted to those who have a criminal record or who'd claimed benefits or social housing. Ms Badenoch has also announced plans to kick out low-paid migrants. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp told GB News there were mistakes made under the previous government, and that's why under a new leader there's a new approach.
In fact, they will be asked to leave and required to leave at the end of their visa. And in fact, if they try and claim benefits before the end of their visa, then they will have the visa revoked and will be removed from the country. Because I think what the British public want to see is very small numbers of people coming in to do high-skilled jobs. What we don't want to see are people coming here who say they're going to work and then don't work, or end up in very low-paid jobs which actually don't make a contribution to the exchequer, to the taxpayer. Overall, this is quite a radical new policy.
Sir Keir Starmer says nuclear power will be prioritised in the new spending review, describing reforms to planning as a game changer for the sector. The plans announced aim to make it easier to build mini nuclear power stations in England and Wales as part of its efforts to boost economic growth in the UK. The reforms will clear a path for so-called small modular reactors to be built for the first time in the country, which ministers say would help to deliver clean, secure and more affordable energy. Sir Keir says the UK once built 21 nuclear reactors in just 10 years and is hoping the country can get back to that.
Really ambitious, which means that we're going for innovation, technology, small modular, which I think will be a huge part of the future that you will all be working on, and of course making it more available in different places. As you know, there's only 8 sites at the moment where we can develop. From today onwards, many other sites can come forward. The potential for that is huge.
In other news, the Foreign Office has announced that a Russian diplomat has had their accreditation revoked by the UK in a tit-for-tat move after a British diplomat was expelled from Moscow last year. Russian ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kellen, was summoned to the Foreign Office to be informed of the move by the government. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says we are unapologetic about protecting our national interests. My message to Russia is clear. If you take action against us, we will respond. The Metropolitan Police has stepped up its efforts to clamp down on phone thieves, seizing 1,000 stolen mobiles and arresting 230 people in just a week. During a week of coordinated action across London, the force specifically targeted and clamped down on phone thieves. This included action in hotspot areas such as the West End and Westminster, where nearly 40% of thefts occur, it said. The Met Police described it as a £50 million a year trade that saw stolen phones resold abroad and in the UK. The Home Secretary is today chairing a summit with law enforcement bodies to focus on tackling the issue. And the Queen has praised the brilliant efforts of health workers supporting sexual assault victims at a specialist centre she officially opened. Queen Camilla launched the purpose-built sexual assault referral centre in Exeter after touring the building and following a private meeting with a survivor who described the difference the service has made to her life. Her Majesty told staff on her visit, "You do a brilliant job and I think you shouldn't go unrecognised." Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has been criticised by members of the public after their local elections were delayed by a year.
Yes, 9 council areas across the country will have to wait until 2026 now to cast their ballot.
But the leader of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage, was outraged by the moves, claiming only dictators cancel elections.
There is no justification for cancelling these elections whatsoever, other than sheer cowardice of what reform might do to them in those campaigns.
OK, he's not very impressed, but joining us now is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, I don't think people are necessarily best pleased, are they, to know that they're not going to be able to exercise their right to vote for rather a long time.
It's worth running over which areas are going to be facing delayed elections. East Sussex, Essex, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, Norfolk, Suffolk, Surrey, Thurrock and West Sussex. And something interesting about all of these areas, all in the southeast, all coastal, southeast and east of England, of course, these are areas that seem to be particularly strong for the Reform Party.
Yeah, and could the Conservatives also be quite pleased about this? We haven't seen them kicking up quite a fuss because, of course, there are a lot of councillors out there who were elected when the Conservatives were very popular, when Boris Johnson was doing very well.
Yeah, the last time these seats were up was 2021. The vaccine rollout, the day, actually, of the Hartlepool by-election, when extraordinarily for an incumbent government, the Conservatives won a parliamentary seat off the opposition, off the Labour Party. That was the scale of the Conservative victory at that time.
OK, well, joining us now is Labour Cooperative Group Leader on Surrey County Council, Councillor Robert Evans. Robert, thank you very much for speaking to us. This doesn't look good, does it? And I can imagine if I was living in one of these areas, I'd be quite furious that my vote had been taken away.
Well, let me say good afternoon. That no voters have contacted me. I represent Stanwell, Moor and part of Ashford. Nobody has contacted me of the electorate to say we want to be sure that our votes go ahead. The turnout in our county council elections over the last few times that I've stood has never touched 30%. So, I mean, it makes no sense to have it...
Robert, you're the leader of the Surrey County Council and you're saying no one cares about the council elections.
No, I didn't say that, but I just said that nobody has contacted me. People recognise when I've spoken to them that with elections, new council coming into place in 2026, it makes no sense to have an election this year when people had only served for one year. So postponing the elections, extending the term, makes absolute sense to most people when it's explained to them.
And yet there is some concern that this reorganisation might not just be 1 year away. I mean, it could be up to 3 years away. That's 3/4 of an entire term. There's a possibility that that councillors like yourself will have an extra 3 years representing the people in your ward without them having a chance to vote. I mean, that's an extraordinary extension if that timescale works out like that.
Well, I don't think that is the timescale that will happen. And look, these proposals were put on the table. Well, the discussion has been around for long as I've been on Surrey County Council, which is nearly 12 years now. We've been talking about it, debating it. The previous government brought out proposals in 2019. So anybody who says these are rushed, we haven't had the time to discuss it. We've been talking about it endlessly, and I welcome the fact that the new government is getting on to deliver on the promise of handing power from Westminster to local people.
Yeah, but just not yet.
Well, it's going to be in a few months. You know, if you try to spend it out to 3 years, I'm looking more at a few months because the Surrey County Council put our proposals on the table and the government will respond. Government's acted very quickly since the general election to put these proposals forward. So I think it's good that we're moving ahead and getting on with what we said we were going to do.
Now, of course, the government's talking about this as if it is devolution, as if it's giving more power to local people. Some local people feel like it's quite the opposite. If they're part of a council that's getting swallowed up by a larger council, perhaps that's a sense of whatever the opposite of devolution is, because their control over their local area will be going further away to some bigger town or city or sort of county authority that is further from them. I mean, in some cases, this is the opposite of devolution.
Well, you can interpret it that way if you choose to, but Surrey County Council is based in Reigate at the moment. This would bring democracy and decision-making closer to people. In Surrey at the moment, if you include Surrey County Council and the boroughs and districts, we've got 12 councils. So there's 12 headquarters, civic centres, town halls, there's 12 chief executives. dozens of deputy chief executives and lots and lots of councillors, it's not the most efficient way of delivering local services to people. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at making services better, delivered better, delivered them more efficiently, more economically and more sensibly.
I mean, Robert, this is fantastic news for councillors who are currently in place. I mean, they get to stay in place without, you know, having to face the public vote for much longer than they were potentially expecting. But as you will have seen, Nigel Farage isn't best pleased about this because he was headed towards some rather good results in some of these areas.
Well, I don't fear anything from reform in my area. I don't know about other people in Surrey, but we're not really worried about reform. We're looking at the agenda. I'm very happy to fight any election on my record in Surrey. As I say, I've won 3 times. The people know me. They know the other Labour councillors, and we look forward. We're talking to residents all the time. I was at a residents group this morning. Not one of them said to me, what about council elections this year? They wanted to talk about other issues, the airport.
Well, then we may as well not have
roads,
elections.
Traffic.
I mean, if no one's...
I didn't say that.
I don't understand this, though. If no one's bothered about the elections and if only 30% of people bother turning up anyway, then you may as well do away with them.
No, this is just about an extension for 1 year because it makes no sense to have elections if a council is going to be abolished in a year's time. Of course, elections are important. We have them nearly every year because we have the general election last year, local elections now next year. So everybody gets their chance to have their say and they're in contact with their councillors all the time.
Of course, there were a list of, I think it was 22 councils that could have had their elections delayed. In the end, it was only a list of 8. What happens to the other ones? I mean, surely that means that they're able to elect people and have a reorganisation.
Yes, because I think and I wasn't obviously involved in that decision making at that level. I think their proposals for their devolution will be a little further away, 2 or 3 years down the line, which is what you alluded to for some councils earlier on. I think the ones in the first phase will be the ones that the plans are most advanced, most progressed, and so that's only going to happen in a year's time.
OK, well, Councillor Robert Evans, great to have you on, Labour and Cooperative Group Leader on the Surrey County Council. So there you go. No one's bothered, apparently.
Well, I do think it is sensible to get rid of... If there are 15 council executives in Surrey alone, I mean, the public payroll that would be, not just the payroll, the pensions, everything else, you know, it's a huge amount of money if we're doubling up. I mean, maybe this is a really rational reorganisation that is overdue. I mean, there are far too many people on high wages paid for actually in elected and unelected positions in local government. If Surrey just had one authority rather than 15, I mean, maybe that's a good thing.
I mean, maybe it's true. People aren't bothered about these local elections in general. I mean, it is true that turnout is usually pretty low. But I think it's the optics of it, really, when the Labour Party is doing very badly in the polls so soon after winning a landslide, and reform is on the surge in a lot of these areas, and the Conservatives know that they're about to have a bloodbath too if there were votes in these areas. You know, it doesn't look like democracy is playing out properly.
I think a lot of people will be asking, why can't the government move faster on this? Yeah. If they know they're going to abolish and reorganise these specific councils, why do we need to wait for a year for it to be done? I mean, the private sector doesn't move at this speed. The private sector wouldn't take more than a year to you know, just cut some jobs. I mean, you could do that tomorrow. I mean, Angela Rayner could go to her office today and say, right, this is the reorganisation, let's enact it, let's make it happen now.
Also, I wouldn't be so comfortable about reform not being a threat in Surrey. I mean, you know, it's not too far-fetched to think that there might be quite a few reform voters in that leafy part of the world.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, of course, those elections coming up in, 4 or 5 months now. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. And up next, Swedish media reports claim to have revealed new information about the recent school shooter's motive. We're going to get that in just a moment.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we're going to introduce you to Liam Wildish. Liam, well, I'd like to think he's a friend of mine because I follow him on Instagram, on TikTok there as well.
You're a big fan, aren't you?
Big fan, because there's what he does. He's a cleaner.
he cleans signs. But the thing is, he's not employed by councils or whatever. He does this voluntarily. And you sort of think to yourself, well, who cleans these signs? Why have these signs been allowed to get into this terrible state of disrepair and filthiness?
So basically, long story short, about 6 years ago, I used to be a window cleaner. In the community where I lived, I noticed all of the road signs were filthy, and I was perfectly equipped to clean them. So basically, I cleaned the road signs as a bit of a thank you to the community and sort of make a little bit of awareness of my window cleaning business at the time. Sort of cleans up the area, makes the road safer, and that's kind of how that started. And people found it like a really satisfying sort of approach. So that sort of led on to today of a video in cleaning the dirty road signs and making sort of satisfying content with it as well.
What is the equipment? What have we got here?
So this is a water-fed pole system connected to a backpack, which is what feeds the water through the end of the brush there. It's perfectly equipped to basically remove this green dirty, it's like a mildew build-up that you get on the signs. As you can see, this is like extremely effective at removing so.
So GB News viewers, if they spot a particularly grisly sign in their area, then they can get in touch.
They can do, yeah.
And Liam Wilder's the sign guy can sort you out.
if you find Liam the sign guy online, drop me a message, let me know, and I'll add you to my list of places.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 21 minutes past 2. Now, Donald Trump over in the United States has been waddling around different prayer breakfasts. He was over in the Capitol, but is I think people can waddle, people can walk, people can move, glide. I mean,
sachets.
Choose your verb. But of course, Donald Trump has been promoting his connection with the religious community in the United States, and he's at his second prayer breakfast of the morning right now.
Again. That's the expression, sir. Then somebody said, "I don't think you can." Oh. Now, I want to be with you regardless, and it's an honor, and it's something I've enjoyed. I've actually met some very nice Democrats here. It's true. I have. But this is a beautiful tradition that started with President Eisenhower in 1953, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. After 4 long years, really, they were very long, dark years, in my opinion. It's great to be back at the prayer breakfast, and I hope you all agree it's nice to once again have a president that shows up to the prayer breakfast. And that agrees to be interviewed for the Super Bowl. I'm doing that too. They haven't done it in so long, they forgot about it. They said, oh, but they hadn't done it in years. But I said, yeah, this morning they wanted to know. And I said, yeah, why not? What the hell? You know the way I look at it? They ask you a question and you give them an answer. It's not that hard. But they didn't show up for years, so they were almost shocked when I said, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? But I want to thank our great newly confirmed Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, who's fantastic, by the way, for being here this morning. I don't know is he around? Where is he? Where is he? with the lights, I can't. There you are. You are a handsome devil. He's a good-looking guy. He's got an even better-looking wife, I can tell you that. But I want to thank you and Catherine you've been fantastic. I knew immediately, you know, he was running in a group of people, and I spotted him immediately. I said, that guy's a winner. He didn't get the gravitas, because to get gravitas, you have to be controversial and, in many cases, a horrible human being. You get a lot of gravitas that way, and he's a very good human being and very smart. But I said, he is really outstanding, and he's going to do a job with Chris Wright. Two of them, it's like a partnership with Interior and Energy. He's going to have more liquid gold coming out of the ground than anybody's ever seen before. We're going to drive the price down, and everything else is going to follow. So he's one of the really important people. He's a very, very, very great gentleman, was a fantastic governor, by the way, and really did do, and sort of learned the oil business as a governor, because he made his money, made a lot of money, which I like. I like people that make money, because that means they can help us. And they always like me to put in really people that have failed. They want, please, sir, he's made too much money and he's become too successful. They want me to hire people that have totally failed to run Department of Energy. Somebody that lost all his life. I just don't want to do it. I know it sounds nice, but I want to get somebody that was so successful, because we got to bring the country back, and him and Chris are going to be unbelievable. I really believe it. But I want to thank you very much, Doug, for what you've done.
Well, there is Donald Trump speaking at his second prayer breakfast of the day out in Washington, D.C., highlighting his connection and love for many religious leaders and those sort of more evangelical politicians too.
Yes, well, there's a little taster for you. But in other news, as she looks to take the fight to reform, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has announced new policies designed to get tough on immigration.
Yes, amongst the measures announced are banning migrants who claim benefits or criminal records from applying for citizenship, and making immigrants wait at least 15 years before they're able to apply to become a British citizen. However, given net migration went up substantially, of course, under the last government, will the public be able to trust the Conservative Party on this issue?
Well, let's discuss this further with the Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister, Matt Vickers, MP. Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this one. It's nice that Kemi Badenoch has given us a policy.
Well, I know you've been gagging for it. Here it is. We've sorted it. We've got you a policy base. It's happening.
Oh, OK.
But is it the right one?
I think, do you know what? Kemi's been honest with the... Well, Kemi's been honest with the public. Previous governments have let us down on immigration. Far too many come to the country. She's got a policy in place and we're going for it. You know, it's around indefinite leave to remain. It's the fact that we're going to double the period in which it takes somebody to qualify. Anybody who's claimed benefits, people who've committed crimes and come to the country, we're going to remove their ability to get the right to remain here in this country. And actually, this is a huge contrast to what Labour are doing. On Monday, we're going to see their Borders Bill come forward, the Surrender Bill that's going to allow people who've arrived here illegally to find a way to stay. They're going to give illegal immigrants the right to find a British citizenship when they get in this country. It's just wrong. It's wrong. They're also removing the ability to test those people for their age. We've seen what happens in terms of social services, in terms of safeguarding, when people enter this country and we can't identify how old they are. Huge consequences there. This bill's stripping that out. All the work that went on to put the Rwanda bill in place to allow us to detain and remove people from this country, they're unstripping a lot of the legislative base of that. They're going the wrong way. There's a clear choice for the public now. I mean,
yeah, you mentioned the checks for the age of migrants that were brought in the Nationality and Borders Bill, I think it was, in 2023. I mean, before then, we had the bizarre situation of someone in his 30s claiming to be a child and being placed in a school, and when the other school children, I say other school children, when the actual school children complained, they were told to shut up. Everyone develops at different rates. I mean, it was an extraordinary situation. Even more extraordinary, the government's putting us back there. But I suppose, Matt Vickers, the question people will ask on all of these issues, whether it's the people with criminal records being able to become British citizens, people who've claimed benefits being able to become British citizens, you had 14 years to implement some of this stuff.
we were making progress. You know what we've conceded? Kemi has said that big mistakes were made by previous governments. But you know what? If we don't put an offer out there, if we don't engage in what we're going to do going forwards, then we may as well just give up. But actually, here we are. We're putting the offer out. You've been gagging for it, Tom. We're giving you it. We're telling you what we're going to do. But in terms of age verification, the ability to check the age that somebody's arrived in this country, that's really fundamental. I was watching a much less reputable media outfit the other day, and they had a foster carer on, a foster carer who gave up all of her time to look after several young people. She could no longer take on migrants because she'd had the situation happen several times where someone arrived in her house. The suggestion was they may be 16 or 15. They were pretty much 30 plus. And the impact that had on other youngsters, the fact that this foster carer can't take migrant children on in any way, shape or form anymore because she can't rely on the age at which they're arriving.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrible.
It's a no-brainer. Why on earth the government would want to do that is insane.
Yeah, it's terrible and it shouldn't be happening, frankly. And to have, grown men pretending to be children and not being checked is just atrocious. But back to Kemi Badenoch's proposal here, because isn't the reality that Boris Johnson let in a huge number of people, huge number of those people were dependents who are not working, and they're all going to get indefinite leave to remain or citizenship before the Conservatives even have a chance to get back into power?
I mean, in the last few years, we've seen it. Well, it's a global problem in terms of the number of people on the move across the globe. It's
we invited these people in
and it
with
happened,
visas.
and we had to get a grasp of it.
We invited them in with visas.
Well, in terms of people who arrived illegally, people who arrived legally, actually in the last year, didn't it more or less halve because we put various things in place that limited your ability to bring dependents with you. And in April this year, we were about to put those salary thresholds up, which meant you had to be earning more than a certain amount to be able to provide for those people that you're bringing into the country. It was about to kick in April. It's been unstitched.
Yeah, but Matt, there was a little bit of heat.
There is a lot more to do. There were
lots
of...
There was a little bit of heat around that. I remember it. There was a little bit of heat around that, and then you immediately dropped the salary threshold because it was proved too controversial.
No. We didn't drop the salary thresholds. They were due to come in April and they've been scrapped. We did put them in place. They were happening. We'd already put one. We were about to up it in April. It had already been put in place. We already had a salary threshold. It's the right thing to do. We need to get on with it. Do you know what? I concede, like Kemi, that lots of mistakes have been made. There's a policy coming forward today that's going to make it harder for people to stay in this country unless they're willing to contribute, pay their way, unless they're going to obey the law of the land. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm right behind Kemi in doing it.
OK, Matt Vickers, Home Office Minister, Shadow Home Office Minister. I'm anticipating the next election already. Shadow Home Office Minister Matt Vickers, thanks so much for joining us and talking through the Conservative Party's first policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sensible one. It's just that all the people that the Conservatives invited into this country will probably have already had their citizenship by the time there's any opportunity to bring in such legislation. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Up next, nuclear power is back on the government's agenda. They're promising to make it easier than ever to build these small modular reactors, isn't it? But will their drive put our countryside at risk?
Emily, thank you. The top stories. The Bank of England lowered the interest rate by 1/4 of a percentage point to the lowest base rate since June 2023. The rate has reduced from 4.75% to 4.5% as the bank has come under pressure to boost the UK economy. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the Bank of England would be monitoring the UK economy and global developments very closely and taking a gradual and careful approach to reducing rates further. The Shadow Chancellor has called it welcome news. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says immigrants should have to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible for British citizenship. Making one of her first policy announcements since becoming leader, Badenoch also said indefinite leave to remain should not be granted to those who have criminal records or who'd claimed benefits or social housing. And Sir Keir Starmer says nuclear power will be prioritised in the spending review, describing reforms to planning as a game changer for the sector. The plans announced aim to make it easier to build mini nuclear power stations in England and Wales as part of its efforts to boost economic growth in the UK. The reforms will clear a path for so-called small modular reactors to be built for the first time in the country, which ministers say would help deliver clean, secure and more affordable energy. Sir Keir says the UK once built 21 nuclear reactors in just 10 years and is hoping the country can get back to that. Those are the latest headlines for now. Mark White has your next update.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A beautiful day today for most of us, with plenty of sunshine, a little cloudier in the far southeast, increasingly so as the day progresses. And that's because the high pressure that has arrived and has brought the sunny skies is gradually moving towards the northeast. We're going to pick up a bit more of a breeze coming in from the east. That's going to drag some cloud into the far southeast. And we're also going to see on the periphery of the same high some strong winds for the west and north of Scotland. Otherwise, it's light winds, it's blue skies and plenty of sunshine with temperatures, well, around average for the time of year, 7 to 9 Celsius, and feeling pleasant enough in any sunshine. Heading into the evening, we'll see a bit more of that cloud in the east and southeast progress westwards across the south and central areas. We'll also see the strong wind continuing across western Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland, with lighter winds and widespread clear skies, temperatures will fall away. Coldest places overnight likely to be southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. I think further south, with more cloud cover arriving through the evening and perhaps a few showers just about into Kent and running along the far south coast, well, that will lead to a less frosty night for many in the south compared with the previous night. And it's really towards the northwest of the UK where we keep the clear skies for longest, where we're going to see frosty conditions once again on Friday morning. Perhaps some fog patches as well for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, more cloud around during Friday morning. A chilly start for all of us, nevertheless, whether you've got the frost or not. And it's going to feel increasingly cold in the increasingly brisk breeze across the south and the east of the UK. We'll also see showers arrive into the south, and these will be a bit sleety in places, perhaps even giving a covering of snow over the Downs and the Chilterns, and then later the Welsh Mountains.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Stirling, the A9 is closed in both directions along Airtree Road off the A907 Causeway Head roundabout after an accident causing delays. The Mersey Ferry is suspended because of a technical problem. Train services are suspended between Cunliffe and Shrewsbury because of a level crossing problem. Buses replacing trains between North Haven and Haverfordwest. The M5 in the West Midlands is partly blocked northbound by an accident between Junction 1 at West Bromwich and the M6 causing queues. Buses replace trains between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey because of a faulty train, and the M5 in Somerset is closed northbound between junctions 24 and 23 near Bridgewater because of a diesel spill. There are queues from junction 25 at Taunton and long delays through Bridgewater as you divert. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 2:37 in the afternoon, and coming on today after our show is Martin Daubney. He's up at 3 o'clock and he's here with us in Paddington. So, yes, what have you got for us then?
I think you nailed it there, Emily, when you said it's nice to see that Kemi Badenoch's got a policy at last. But will it pass the sniff test? I suspect not. 14 years of failure and, stopping people getting citizenship after 15 years. They've been here for 15 years. We'll be hearing from Kemi Badenoch herself, speaking to her directly, putting these questions to them. And, of course, another question I think we'll be asking Ms Badenoch is, you've been a bit quiet about these elections that have been cancelled locally. I wonder why. Well, we've got some data coming out showing it's the Conservatives taking a pasting in these locals.
Did you see what that Labour county councillor in Surrey had to say a little earlier?
What did he say?
He seemed to say, oh, well, no one's come to me worried about this, and only 30% of people turn up to the local elections anyway. As if that's all right, fine. Yeah, no issue then.
Well, it is, and I'm all right, Jack. The Labour Party, the Conservative Party are keeping very, very conspicuous by their silence. The Reform Party, Lib Dems, both angry. Both of them set to make good gains in these elections. And I think this could be the beginning of people like going, do you know what? We want real change. We've got all the data on that. It's going to be a corker.
Interesting. And that exclusive interview with Kemi Badenoch, looking forward to it, up from 3.
Excellent stuff.
Great stuff. Well, let's keep going with this show. We've still got another joyful 20 minutes of us for now, because the government has announced it will tear up so-called archaic planning rules to allow the construction of new nuclear power plants across England and Wales.
Yes, the Prime Minister made the announcement during a visit to a nuclear facility in Lancashire earlier today, fitting, with the government seeing nuclear power as a vital part of its plans to create a new era of clean electricity, because it does not cause the carbon emissions in the same way as your traditional fossil fuels.
It barely produces anything. Well, apart from lots and lots of power, of course. Let's discuss it further with the head of research at Britain Remade, Ben Hopkinson. Ben, thanks for being in the studio with us. What has the government actually announced today?
So the government has announced plans to redo how we site nuclear power stations. So you used to only be able to build nuclear power stations on 8 designated sites. So this is great.
8 for the entire country?
For the entire country, yes. And that's great for your big, massive nuclear power plants of old, but there's new technology that's making nuclear power plants a lot smaller. And these smaller plants are 1/10 the size of old ones, so they use less water and they can be put pretty much anywhere around the country.
Does this technology actually exist? I mean, we keep hearing about small modular reactors, we keep hearing about Rolls-Royce and all of their research. Has anyone actually built one?
There are a lot of them coming in the planning stages. So whilst there isn't one built now, there's a huge potential around about the end of the decade for small modular reactors to come online. And what we need to do now is lay out the planning process to let them be built smoothly so that we're not waiting around filling out paperwork and we're building when the technology arrives.
And is there a way to make sure that it's, private investors who have to carry the risk here and the cost, or is this all going to come out of our pockets?
Well, the joy of these small modular reactors, they're a lot smaller, which means that it's a lot easier for private industry to fund them. So in the States, there's a lot of investment coming from AI companies because they need that firm, reliable power to power their big models. So there's definitely potential for private investment.
Because that's my main concern when we talk about infrastructure, when the government says we're going to do X, Y, Z, is, OK, how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? And are you sure you've got the right technology?
Yes. Well, the small modular reactors should be a little bit easier to construct. But there is also plans for a task force to be launched on nuclear regulations. Because right now, the UK is the most expensive country to build nuclear in the world.
I mean, this is extraordinary. We were the country that first built a commercial nuclear power station, and then we haven't built one for 30 years. Now we try and start building them at Hinkley and at Sizewell, and then the most expensive things on the face of the planet. What went wrong?
So the same reactor design was approved in France and Finland, but the UK forced it to make 7,000 changes. So that's 35% extra steel, 25% extra concrete, and all those changes means that it costs double here than the same reactor to be built in France or Finland.
Do we think that the French have dangerous reactors? I mean, why do we need to make 7,000 changes compared to the French model?
There's not much of a reason. It's just our different path to regulation. So we're hoping to see the regulator adopt the same regulations as the EU and the US. So if a reactor's approved there, it should be approved here.
Well, that would seem blooming sensible. I find it extraordinary that, if France builds something, we're not allowed to build it here. We have to change it 7,000 times.
Apparently the French nuclear isn't all it's cracked up to be. They've had issues.
Oh, I think they're just quite old.
Yeah, they've had old ones. They've got issues too.
Well,
it's not all perfect in France.
I think it's the South Koreans who do it best, right?
Yes, yeah. South Koreans, 1/6 the cost of us.
For goodness sake, why can't we be more like South Korea, eh?
Well, much more, no doubt, to come from the government's announcements on that, thanks to Ben Hopkinson of Britain Remade. Now, Rutland has been referred to as a county since the 12th century. But under the government's planned reforms to local government, England's smallest county might well be losing its independence.
Well, we can now go live to Rutland and speak to GB News East Midlands reporter Will Hollis, who's been in Rutland all day. Will, it does sound as though this would be quite a sad change.
quite a shift, and that's what the government wants. They call it a generational power shift, moving power outside of Whitehall down to the town hall, as they describe it. And what they mean is essentially shutting down smaller councils like Rutland County Council, merging it potentially with Leicestershire. And this isn't just happening in this part of rural England, it could be happening all over the country, but Rutland is the smallest county in England, so those big changes will have a massive effect. Let's first of all just talk to Gina Bradbury, who's from the Outdoor Guide. You bring people outdoors to places like Rutland. How big of a draw is the rural nature of Rutland to bringing people here?
Well, I think, having come from Rutland, since we've lived here as a family since 1972, it is an incredibly special place, and I think it would be a crying shame to lose its ceremonial status by merging. You could cherry pick the good things to make it work, but I think it is vital that Rutland keeps its name. And I'm of a mindset of, if it's not broken, why try and fix it? But our aim, and the Outdoor Guide's aim, with a lot of businesses in Rutland, is to bring people into Rutland for the sake of the economy and tourism. And we work very closely with a lot of businesses here, and we absolutely love it. And Julia Bradbury's my sister.
The TV presenter and outdoor extraordinaire.
Absolutely, yep. And you know, we just have a great affinity here, and our parents are still here on Rutland Water, and it's just a very, very magical place. And it was once absorbed by Leicestershire and then reinstated as Rutland again. And I think where there's a will, there's a way. Multum in parvo, you know, it's a very, 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 very special place.
And a strong sense of feeling from you. How strong is the sense of feeling, really quickly, for the whole of Rutland, the 41,000 people that live here, if they were to merge with a big council like Leicestershire?
I think it would be catastrophic. I think it's a very, very individual place, and it needs to keep that. And I think everybody feels the same. We can join forces with certain things which will benefit everybody, but Rutland, absolutely, no question, needs to have its identity kept.
Gina, thank you so much for talking to us today. Gina Bradbury-Fox from the Outdoor Guide, live here in Oakham, the biggest town in England's smallest county, Rutland.
Fantastic stuff, Will. From a personal perspective, I've just loved seeing so many different parts of Rutland today throughout the show. It's such a beautiful part of the world. Thanks so much for showing it and for bringing us that story too.
Well, speaking of beautiful parts of the world, you might be looking at some of these European holiday destinations. Here's the weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's been quite a wet start to the year across Iberia, and there's more rain to come for Spain and Portugal. Plenty of sunshine, though, for Greece and across Cyprus after we had some showers here at the weekend. It is still a little on the cool side. Some showers heading into southern Italy and across Malta on Friday afternoon. Much of the south of Spain still dry at this stage, but that rain is moving in, plus sunshine across the Canaries. That rain across Spain will head to the south of France as we go into the week, so turning wet in Nice.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Now coming up, the royal family are visiting different charities and centres across the country today. We're going to have a little royal roundup after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. It's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact checkers. Fact checkers in inverted commas, because it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. That it's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate. So that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. Now, Prince William is in Angus in Scotland today, where he's visiting community-led organisations that are working to combat rural isolation and loneliness.
Well, here's a bit of what His Royal Highness say.
Mental health is a particular thing I care about. Young male mental health particularly, although not exclusively. And I love the countryside and I love farming as well, and conscious that it's an area that needs a little bit of maybe support in understanding that there's access and support out there for young farmers and or farmers, any age farmers, as well as making sure that we are breaking down any taboos and stigmas around mental health. Because I think in the farming world it's maybe not talked about as much as in other sectors.
Well, there you go. We can go live to Carnoustie in Scotland now and speak to GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, you've been following the royals. What's been happening?
Yeah, I certainly have, Emily. Welcome to East Scone Farm here in Angus, where Prince William was just an hour ago. Now, look at these crops here. All of these strawberry crops heavily damaged within a storm which Prince William was watching. You see the metal polytunnel poles have all fallen on the crops. Over there are some polytunnels unaffected by the storm. That's what all of this should look like. And Prince William was hearing how £200,000 worth of damage has been caused by this particular storm. And the problem is, Emily and Tom, is that insurance companies will not cover this anymore because there was a very similar storm back in 2012, and therefore the insurance company has to pay out a lot of money and they will no longer insure it. So Prince William was hearing about the unpredictability of farming, and he spoke to a group of young farmers here in Scotland to talk about, as you heard from him there, their mental health, particularly around breaking the stigma around mental health and the problems of being quite isolated as a young farmer in rural communities up and down the UK. Now, this farm in particular farms 800 tonnes of strawberries every year, selling it to supermarkets right across the UK. But they were also saying, a number of farmers who I spoke to earlier on were saying it's the unpredictability of some government policies. So, for example, 55% of their production costs here actually goes on labour. So the hike in national insurance contributions for employers has really affected them. And Prince William was hearing about that as well. But of course, he has to remain politically neutral. His focus was very much on mental health. In his own duchy farms for the Duchy of Cornwall, he has created a new initiative to help young farmers cope give them mental health provision, essentially. So it's a busy day for Prince William. Elsewhere, Princess Anne has visited the hospital which treated her following her horse-related accident a few months ago to thank hospital staff and the paramedics who treated her.
OK, well, Cameron Walker, live from Carnoustie. Carnoustie. It's a
You're just making it up now. It's not an Italian town.
It's got a new in it, hasn't it? So,
not Italiano
live
town.
from Scotland, Cameron Walker has been following the royals for us. Well, thanks so much for staying with us on Good Afternoon
I
Britain.
apologise for him.
Martin's up next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a clear afternoon for most of us and it stays that way, especially in the north and west overnight, but it is going to turn cloudier from the south and the east as high pressure slowly migrates towards Scandinavia. That's going to establish more of an easterly breeze for many parts of the UK, but particularly the southeast corner, where we're already pulling in some cloud, and that cloud will increase across much of England and Wales overnight. But western areas staying largely clear, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland clear as well, and where winds are light, we'll see a touch of frost and some fog patches by dawn. But even where you've got the breeze and the cloud further south, it's going to be a cold start to the day. There'll also be some showers around for the south and southeast. But towards the north and northwest, beautiful blue skies once again, plenty of sunshine for Shetland, Orkney, the Hebrides, western and central Scotland. Just some low cloud there hugging the east coast of Scotland. Patchy cloud for Northern Ireland, but mostly dry and bright. But it's across England and Wales where we're seeing a lot more cloud during Friday morning compared with Thursday morning. And we've got these showers moving into the southeast at